Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know, I'm your humble host, the Yao Minga Revolution, and we got morning revolutionary class today, y'all. Salute. Be sure to wipe your feet. You're in the House of Revolution. Hit the like button, like, share, subscribe. Let everybody know Core Figure is on live right now. Kamala EXPOSED. This thorough presentation what I'm finna kill our debate on who she is, who put in office, and she not like us. So we finna get right down to this. I'm not finna let them do that play on us. She not a black woman. We're gonna see her speaking, her people speaking. She not black. Even her black pops don't like us. I'm gonna let y'all hear from her pops. He don't like us. And then we're gonna get into her past with downtown Willie Brown. We're gonna get into her criminal. We're gonna get into her liking prisoners to do slave labor. We're gonna get into her want to keep death row patients locked up, don't want to let them out even when they're innocent. We're gonna break down who Kamala really is. So salute to everybody in the building. Let's get right into it. Let's see.
Well, it's not just Americans who are looking forward to tonight's inauguration. Kamala Harris' ancestral village in southern India is also going to be celebrating. Ms. Harris will not only be the first woman to be vice president, she will also be the first woman of color and the first person of South Asian descent to hold the office.
South Asian descent.
Tulasandrapuram is the hometown of her Indian grandfather. Posters of her can be seen all around the village. That's a sure sign that locals are proud of what Ms. Harris has achieved.
Now, how many of y'all at y'all family reunion it looked like that? These are people.
Food has been distributed to village children as gifts to celebrate. Special prayers for her success have also been held at a local temple.
They praying at the local temple. We got to get that on that too. They praying at the local temple to their ancestral gods. She tried to fool y'all on that too. This is her ancestral deity that her and her mama worship right here. And they're at the temple praying to their ancestral gods for Kamala to seize power on behalf of them.
I wish her well, success. And I wish after 4 years, she becomes the president of...
Oh, this Indian guy right here say he wishes her success. This is kinfolk right here. And after 4 years of Jim Crow joke, that's what he said. He wished her to become president. Well, damn, is your wish coming true, Indian guy? These people hate our guts. You better understand about the racism in India. India is one of the most racist countries on this planet. Very backwards and barbaric. Women, a woman can't walk down the streets of India. Boy, they will take everything she got and her little goodies. These people is sick. Not all of them. We don't want to do that here. But, so, they love Kamala. They say they want Kamala to be president. They would never want a black person to be president. They saying she's not black. She's Indian. So they good with that.
Yes. That is my wish, sincere wish.
We are feeling very proud. Yeah, the state is also happy. The country is also proud of. The country is also proud that an Indian is being elected as vice president of America.
That an Indian. You see, this is the joke on black people. The Indians, they know her mama is one of them. They laughing like a motherfucker at the descendant slaves, letting Kamala play them.
God.
See, that was some people. We just getting started off here. We got her whole laundry list of sin that because the news media, they're going to try to erase all these videos real soon. A lot of them already been getting erased. But I found them going in the historic records. Kamala would never get away with this. She never said she was black a day in her life. And then I tracked down her daddy. He don't like us. If she try to tie him, he don't want to be tied to the descendants of slaves. He say that. He don't want to be tied to Americans. He say that. It's disgusting to him.
Bringing that Kamala Harris had and the mother's influence on her life.
See, we were not there when her mother was.
That's her auntie right there. That's her aunt right there, y'all. In her ancestral attire. You know, when you go to some of these stores, they be in there like this. Yes, this is Kamala aunt.
Bringing her up. But from what we saw, she was a strict mother. She taught her values. She told her what to do. And she told her to fight for everything. That is the kind of thing.
Ma'am, and also now you can see that Kamala Harris has risen to such a high position. Do you see the same streak of rebellion that you saw in her mother, in Kamala Harris, and in the way she has actually fought her way to the top?
Yes, definitely. because Shamla would have been very happy.
Now, and I'm just getting started. If your mother's an Indian lady, born with Indian heritage, spoke with a heavy Indian accent, this is your auntie, your village is an Indian. Where did you get all this black stuff from? Your Jamaican pops don't like us. We're going to get to that. Who taught you to be black? Where did that happen? Because you definitely did not get it in your family, ma'am. When you going to admit that you heard them call us nigga? Like even Barack Obama admitted his grandmother and grandpa was racist who said nigga. When Kamala going to admit she heard nigga a lot around now?
Had she been alive,
it wasn't a term of
unfortunately she died very young. But, you know, she would have been very happy because she brought them up to come up to this level. And I knew Shamla when Kamala was first fighting for the DA post in San Francisco. I was in California at that time. And Kamala was thinking of standing for the DA post.
Now, I started to start this live off with her criminal justice horrible work. But I said, no. The most I say, no. Let's see her background, then get to that. Because if you see her background, then you get to that, then you will know why she treated us like she treated us, because she not like us.
And we were talking about it and we knew about it. And from that time, I knew that Kamala wanted to get somewhere. And she said, I'm going to do it and I'm going to become a DA. And that's how she did. She became a DA, then she became an Attorney General, then she became a senator. You know, that is the kind of a thing.
Ma'am, in fact, we came to know via reports that you had broken coconuts for Kamala Harris during her course as a...
There was a little... when the Attorney General post was there was a slight confusion in the counting of the post because that was a fight between the DA of California, DA of San Francisco and DA of Los Angeles. So there was a little confusion. So overnight, we were on the computer trying to see whether the votes had been counted.
Now, when you go to India, what you find out is these type of Indians consider themselves white. Yes, they are racist to, these are not indigenous Indians. Let me get that correct too. No, they don't like indigenous Indians. No, these are Johnny-come-lately people of that continent. Well, I don't have enough time to teach y'all. Majority of y'all know that. So these are Johnny-come-lately Indians who want to be Anglo-Indians, love the British and Americans. You see what I'm saying? So now you're going to see why Kamala did what she did. When she did, we enough for this lady. I'll let y'all see her. She's not going to get all this shine on my TV. I just need to show y'all exactly. We're going to get a little bit more of her background and her Indian heritage. Then we're going to move on to her horrible criminal justice record where she wanted slave labor. Yes, she did. Salute. Shalom, family. She wanted slave labor because she the descendant of a slave owner. See, that's what her and Joe Biden had in common. They descended of slave owners.
Well, we got our first look at the Democratic ticket in the U.S. presidential race when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris appeared together for the first time as running mates in Delaware. During their speeches, they slammed President Trump, with Harris saying he was not, in her words, up to the job. Harris is making history as the first black woman and first person of Indian descent to join a major political party's ticket.
My mother and father, they came from opposite sides of the world to arrive in America. One from India and the other from Jamaica, in search of a world-class education.
Don't bring him.
But what brought them together was the civil rights movement of the 1960s.
That's a lie.
And that's how they met, as students in the streets of Oakland, marching and shouting for this thing called justice, in a struggle that continues today.
Same lie Obama told.
And for more, let's head to New Delhi and CNN's Vedica Sood, who joins us now via Skype. Good to talk with you. So you had an opportunity to talk to some of Kamala Harris's maternal family. What did they tell you about her and the influences she came into?
Rosemary, I spoke with the maternal uncle of Harris, who's 80 years old, but he's so active for his age. I must mention that. An anecdote that he mentioned, which was very interesting to me, was the influence of her mother on Harris. Now, imagine a 19-year-old Indian woman.
This is very particular what she's saying. The influence of her mother and her family, her people from India. The lady had no black experiences until she, I guess, went to college or ran into some black people. That's serious talk. That's serious business, man.
Deciding to go overseas for her education. She traveled all alone. One fine day, she told her parents that I want to go abroad, I want to go to America, I want to go to UC Berkeley, and I want to study there. Her parents were extremely progressive. So the father, I believe, said, all right, Shamla, go ahead. I can only sponsor you for a year. After that, you're on your own. And she did live up to the expectations. She managed to complete her doctorate there, and then she joined the civil rights movement as well when she was in university. A lasting impression on Senator Harris is from the mother as well as the maternal grandfather, who she used to visit very often in India. Those were her roots that she keeps talking about so proudly. Here's more on that.
Those are her roots.
My mother, who raised me and my sister, was a proud woman.
Indian woman.
She was a brown woman. She was a woman with a heavy accent.
And her mother, Shamla Gopalan, was also the biggest influence in Kamala Harris's life.
The answer is absolutely yes, Joe.
After the big announcement, Harris's sister wrote in a Twitter post, "You can't know who Kamala Harris is without knowing who our mother was." In 1958, a precocious 19-year-old Indian, Gopalan traveled thousands of miles from her home and family to pursue a doctorate in nutrition and endocrinology in America. She soon became an active civil rights crusader while studying at UC Berkeley.
Once she went there, she almost felt free. And she took part in politics. She used to bring whole series of literature, leftist literature from Karl Popper's, he was a great philosopher.
In her book, Harris says, "There is no title or honor on earth I'll treasure more than to say I am Shamla Gopalan Harris's daughter." Harris's visits to India with her mother kept her connected to her roots. Her grandfather, who had strong views on humanitarian issues, worked closely with officials to reallocate refugees. Their conversations had a strong influence on her.
People really need to get on about that. Well, why are you saying your last name is Harris? To rip black people off, to get more benefits through our programs that's designed for black people and people for color and all this other shit she used. Why are you using Harris? Your mother's an Indian lady. You did not grow up with your Jamaican father who don't want to be tied to us. I get to that. Why are you using the name Harris? That's a scam.
Along the beach in India really planted something in my mind and created a commitment in me before I even realized it. That has led me to where I am today.
Harris's maternal uncle, Gopalan Balachandran, who lives in Delhi, tells us how the senator turns to her amma, which means mother in Tamil, for guidance even after her death.
I don't have to tell her, make your mother proud. She said, what are you telling me? Everything that I do, I ask myself, would Amma approve of this?
Kamala in Hindi means lotus flower and is an important symbol in Indian culture, rooted deep in the bottom of the river. Very similar to
what her mama did is the same thing Nikki Haley mama did. Change their name so they'll fit in American society, so they get all the benefits of American society. This lady she couldn't play white, or she would. If she could have played white, she would have passed as white with no problem. That's what she would have loved to do. She was darker complected because her Jamaican father, so she had to run this black con on people, but she have no black roots. She was raised with no black people, all Indian people, and her mother is the biggest factor in her life. A heavy accented Indian lady.
Harris's Indian identity, which she wears on her sleeve. There's no doubt that the
Now that we know who she not, and she's not a black lady, now let's get into what she did in office.
Congresswoman Gabbard, you took issue with Senator Harris confronting Vice President Biden at the last debate. You called it a, quote, false accusation.
Revolutionary salute to Shannon G for the donation to the war chest. To say, I feel nauseous. Revolutionary salute. I appreciate the love, Queen. Revolution is a way of life. I feel nauseous too, but the truth is like castor oil. It tastes bad, but it's good for you.
that Joe Biden is a racist. What's your response?
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence.
Listen to the Democratic crowd cheer at her record. They was like, they didn't like her. She dropped out the race after Tulsi Gabbard ripped her apart. She was embarrassed.
Man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about former offenders and getting them counseling. It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize, but legalize marijuana in the United States.
I want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse.
She blocked evidence for death row inmates until she was forced to release the evidence that freed these, exonerated these people. Look at her face, man. This is what they hiding. This is the real Kamala. She dropped out the race after this. Nobody wanted her. This is the real her. But why was she doing this to people of color and people, minorities and Black people? Because she is an Indian lady who don't like them.
Excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Senator Harris.
My entire career, I have been personally opposed to the death penalty, and that has never changed. And I dare anybody who is in a position to make that decision.
How would you oppose to the death penalty when you had evidence that would exonerate the death row inmates? No, them people was gonna die, and you were forced to release the evidence, and then people got out. That's ridiculous.
Face the people I have faced to say, I will not seek the death penalty. That is my background. That is my work. I am proud of it. I think you can judge people by when they are under fire, and it's not about some fancy opinion on a stage, but when they're in the position to actually make a decision, what do they do? When I was in the position of having to decide whether or not to seek a death penalty on cases I prosecuted, I made a very difficult decision that was not popular to not seek the death penalty. History shows that, and I am proud of those decisions.
Salute, Queen. Lies. I got a real record. Let's get into her love for slave labor. Let's get into that. Something they gonna try to hide from y'all.
So there are more details about Kamala Harris's record as prosecutor in California. And it turns out those details are not great. Now, this is according to the Daily Beast. Harris's office had apparently once made the case that nonviolent offenders needed to stay in prison longer because they were a great source of cheap labor.
That's slave labor, y'all.
Now, that, of course, is literal slavery or basically virtual slavery, right? So let me give you some of the details. Back in 2000.
Who do you think those people were that was in prison being forced to give them free labor, slave labor? Who do you think them people were? Oh, that was the brown and black people that she was pretending like she gave a damn about. No, this is a record. She purposely, non-violent offenders, she purposely wanted to keep them in prison because the big money people say, hey, we can make a lot of money off those people. She throw people in prison for marijuana, non-violent, and then she leave them in there, and then they make millions off of them. That's Kamala.
2011, the Supreme Court had a case where they ruled Brown versus Plata. Now, in that decision, they found that California's prisons were so overcrowded that they had violated the Constitution's prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment. So by 2014, the state was now ordered to allow nonviolent second-time offenders who have served half their sentence to be eligible for parole. So now that's good, right? So these people, of course, are nonviolent offenders. Yes, they have reoffended once, likely because, let's be honest, possession, right? Possession is probably one of the biggest, I guess, crimes that people get put in prison for, thanks to our war on drugs. Now, another part is that these people are likely more minority. So minorities get arrested at higher rates than white people, despite being less of the population. Now, of course, they should, in my view, they should be considered for parole, or at least to be eligible for parole, right? But it turns out that Kamala Harris' office did not agree. In fact, according to court filings, lawyers for the state said California met benchmarks for these parolees and argued that if certain potential parolees were given a faster track out of prison, it would negatively affect the prison's labor programs. Now, those labor programs include some that allow inmates to fight California's wildfires for about $2 a day. Now, they said extending 2-for-1 credits to all minimum custody inmates at this time would severely impact fire camp participation, a dangerous outcome while California is in the middle of a difficult fire season and severe drought. This is lawyers for Kamala Harris's office, and they wrote in this filing. They also noted that the fire camp program required physical fitness in addition to a level of clearance that allowed the felon to be off-site. So now that's interesting, right? That's their argument. Not only that, they said, but they added that draining the prisons of minimum custody inmates would deplete the labor force both internally and local communities where low-level nonviolent offenders worked for pennies on the dollar, collecting trash and tending to city parks. So again, that is free labor.
Disgusting.
That is labor. Those are jobs that could have been done by regular working Americans at a decent wage. Instead, here you had the government saying, that's okay. We have a prison labor force that can do that for these companies and for the government for super, super cheap. Lovely. And their argument is, of course, if you let them go on parole, then we're going to lose that revenue. We're going to lose that labor force.
Mm-hmm. So people not getting
can't
parole,
do that. We got to keep
so
them in prison.
Money.
That's ridiculous. Not only that, but that's disgusting.
And Kamala Harris,
in the end, of course,
was down
the
with
state went the right route and extended the 2-for-1 credits to all eligible minimum security prisoners, allowing more people to be fast-tracked to parole. So now Harris's office, they lost on that issue. Thank goodness. Now, Donald Spector, executive director for the prison law office and lead counsel on that case, said, quote, once we ridiculed them and flagged them for that, they ended up changing their tune. But that was their initial response. So now her lawyers had made that response, had made that argument initially, and then corrected course, right? So that was her lawyers. What about Kamala Harris herself? Well, she told BuzzFeed News 2 months after the arguments were made on her behalf that she was, quote, shocked by it, telling the publication that she was going to look into this. I am shocked and appalled. I'm going to go look into this. I'm going to make sure that we don't make an argument like that again. According to spokesman Ian Sams, as she said at the time, Senator Harris was shocked and troubled by the use of this argument. She looked into it and directed the department's attorneys not to make that argument again. Why? Because it's a terrible argument. Yes, we would rather exploit prisoners than actually allow people to go and get paroled and actually not have to work for $2 a day. So, and again, these are nonviolent offenders, right? And by the way, this is campaign spokesman Ian Sams, because this had just recently come up. Now, her office, on behalf of the State Corrections Department, then came to the table with the plaintiff's representatives to negotiate an agreement, which the court subsequently approved, that led to an expansion of the 2-for-1 credits. Now, that's her campaign, as I said. Whether you believe that that's what happened, well, that's up to you. But there is one person who doesn't believe it. Or, well, more than one person, but one person mentioned in the article, and that's Specter. Now, he said, as far as I know, she did very little, if anything, to improve the criminal justice system when she was Attorney General. The way that I look at it is she was really late to the party. And more importantly, when she had the authority to do something as Attorney General, she was absent. She basically carried on the policies of her predecessor, for the most part, in battling us on getting the prison population down and anything else that the government wanted to do to prevent prison conditions from improving.
So don't listen
Understand
to
that?
criminal justice.
To stop them from improving.
Swindler.
There were issues. There were problems. One of them was, of course, too many people in prison. These were documented problems. They knew. But under Harris, it got so bad, and she was so much into inaction that she had to get embarrassed into doing something. I think this is far from being a progressive prosecutor. You want progressive? You look at Larry Krasner in Philly. Since he got elected, he's been reshaping the criminal justice landscape, going against police chiefs and judges, not prosecuting as many people, which is actually kind of a good thing, right? That's the complete opposite of Harris's record. Now, Laura Baslin, law professor and former director of the Loyola Law School Project for the Innocent in LA, had recently wrote an op-ed in the New York Times before Harris launched her campaign. And she said, quote, time after time, when progressives urged her to embrace criminal justice reforms as district attorney and then the state's attorney general, Ms. Harris opposed them or stayed silent. You know what that says to me? That Harris, just like Obama, doesn't want to rock the boat. Doesn't want to be confrontational. Doesn't really want to fight.
Scam black people.
Just wants to be
criminal justice reform.
Establishment. Steady as we go. We're going to continue on the same path, and we're not going to do massive reform. Now, she talks a great game. Big reforms. I love that kind of talk. That kind of talk perks my ears up, and I get interested. Oh, you want to do Medicare for all? Oh, that sounds great. I love Medicare for all. You want to do actual prison reform? I'm all ears. I want to listen. I can't wait. But if you don't really mean it, then I got no interest. And see, we can tell if you mean it or not.
See a scammer. Indian.
We can look into the past. We can look into your positions and see whether or not you actually stood for criminal justice reform. If you actually stood for healthcare, we can look at your donors.
She don't stand for none of that.
And so what I'm seeing right now from doing all of that stuff is there's more more all talk and no action. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to add.
The vice president has still failed to acknowledge that it was wrong to take the position that he took at that time. Listen, I mean, talk about now running for president and you change your position. Do you now say that you have evolved and you regret that? Because you've only, since you've been running for president this time, said that you in some way would take that back, or you didn't agree with the decision that you made over many, many years.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that.
Your response.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Hey, it's Kamala Harris.
She's a rising star in the Democratic Party. The most sort of Obama-like hype around her.
Possibly your next president of the United States.
Last week, Senator Kamala Harris finally made it official.
I am running for president of the United States.
Well,
and
the California Democrat is trying to position herself as a reformer who works tirelessly to correct the abuses of the criminal justice system. But the senator has one big problem: her long record as a law and order prosecutor. Harris's new memoir, The Truths We Hold, makes no mention of her past as an old school drug warrior, a defender of dirty prosecutors, and a political opportunist who has made life more dangerous for sex workers. Harris doesn't apologize for her previous stances, even those she now disavows. Instead, she's decided to try and convince voters that she has always been a progressive prosecutor.
How do you reconcile your contradictory past with what you claim to support today?
I've been consistent my whole career.
Here are some of the stories that the senator is hoping you'll forget in the run-up to 2020. Harris's political rise has been propelled by a years-long, high-profile campaign against alleged sex traffickers. What she's actually done is throw women in jail for having consensual sex while trampling on the rule of law to advance her own political ambitions. Ignoring the pleas of sex workers and human rights advocates for over a decade, she's fought against campaigns to decriminalize consensual adult prostitution in California. As Attorney General, she created a statewide program to get truckers to report suspected sex workers to police. These policies didn't stop traffickers, but they did land plenty of sex workers behind bars.
One of the greatest offenders is Backpage.com.
Harris fought to destroy Backpage.com, a classified site that sex workers use to find and screen their clients, even though she publicly admitted that the site's founders, Michael Lacey and James Larkin, were protected from prosecution under federal free speech laws.
But tonight, a groundbreaking arrest.
But a month before Election Day in her Senate race, Harris went ahead and had them arrested anyway, parading them before the cameras on pimping charges, which were then promptly dismissed by a judge. When Harris got to Congress, she kept up her crusade, becoming a big proponent of the 2018 law known as Cesta Fasta.
One cannot cowardly sit behind a computer committing their crime. Quite the contrary.
The result was that many sex workers had no choice but to return to the streets, where soliciting clients is considerably more dangerous.
It's because you don't know who's going to pick you up.
There's more pimps and there's more guys out here.
Meanwhile, Harris declined to intervene in a real underage sex trafficking scandal that involved dozens of police and other local authorities in the Bay Area.
America has a deep and dark history of people using the power of the prosecutor as an instrument of injustice. I knew this history well, of innocent men framed, of prosecutors hiding information that would exonerate defendants.
Yes, and during her time as California's top cop, Harris contributed to that history repeatedly by going to bat on behalf of dirty prosecutors. Her office appealed the dismissal of a case in which a prosecutor had fabricated a confession to secure a conviction and fought an appeal in a case where a prosecutor had lied to the jury during trial. In 2015, Harris tried to stop the removal of the Orange County District Attorney's Office from a murder trial after it repeatedly failed to turn over evidence to the defense. Her office even tried to keep a man in jail who had been wrongfully incarcerated for 13 years after a judge ruled that he had proven himself innocent just because the man hadn't delivered that proof quite fast enough. And as San Francisco DA, Harris hid known misconduct by a crime lab technician who admitted to deliberately tainting evidence.
Did prosecutors working under you know about the concerns about that lab?
The prosecutors
which
in
is
my
what the judge
office
alleged.
Did not know about it, at least said they did not know about it.
The debacle has since led to the dismissal of hundreds of criminal cases.
Something else it's past time we get done is dismantling the failed war on drugs, starting with legalizing marijuana.
Your opponent, Ron Gold, has said that he is for the legalization of marijuana recreationally. Your thoughts on that?
That he is entitled to his opinion.
Harris is a former drug warrior who is now refashioning herself as pro-legalization. That's a positive shift, but not a reason to rewrite the past or ignore the patterns it reveals in her judgment. 4 years after the cultural tide had turned in favor of criminal justice reforms, Harris continued to support lock-em-up policies that disproportionately hurt minorities. As California Attorney General, Harris opposed marijuana legalization as late as 2014, promoted civil asset forfeiture without a conviction as a way to fight drug rings, and sought to more aggressively police prescription drug use. In her new book, Harris reveals that her drug warrior mentality hasn't changed. It's just that her emphasis has shifted.
We also need to reinstate the DEA's authority to go after the major pharmaceutical manufacturers and distributors, and we need to invest resources in law enforcement efforts to cut off the supply of fentanyl from China. Let's believe in a more perfect union without mass incarceration of African American men. We put more people in prison than any country on earth for no good reason.
Yes, we do. And once these people were in prison, Harris saw to it that they'd have a hell of a time getting out.
I absolutely believe there should be severe and serious consequence for violent crime, which is why I've prosecuted those cases and will always seek the highest sentence. As a prosecutor and law enforcement, I have a huge stick. So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy.
Before her recent about-face, Harris chose not to endorse proposed sentencing reforms on the California ballot in 2012 and 2014, and she defended the constitutionality of cash bail until 2016. Harris's office also fought an order to reduce California's prison population after the Supreme Court determined the conditions amounted to cruel and unusual punishment. Although she later claimed to be shocked by what they had done, Harris's attorneys argued that nonviolent offenders should stay behind bars because the state needed the cheap labor they provide.
We are part of a longer story, and we are responsible for how our chapter gets written.
As she blazes her path to the White House in 2020, Kamala Harris is trying to rewrite her last chapter, but her record remains.
Our children and our grandchildren will ask at that inflection moment, where were you? And what did you do in service of your family, your neighborhood, your community, and your country?
The thing about Kamala is she is dirty, and she has been dirty from the beginning. And that's why I just want to play this one clip, and then I'll get into more detail about this. This is something they dug up. What she said about young people is cut 14.
What else do we know about this population, 18 through 24? They are stupid. That is why we put them in dormitories, and they have a resident assistant. They make really bad decisions.
And then that's what she said. And then she was asked later during the primaries, should they be given the vote, these stupid people? Is cut 2.
Given that policies passed now will affect the younger generation for years to come, do you believe that Americans should have the right to vote at age 16?
I'm really interested in having that conversation. I have to tell you that. I think that there is no question that if we are looking at what is going on in our country, we are putting more responsibilities on people at a younger age. And the larger number of people that we can involve in the electoral process, I think the more robust it would be.
So they're stupid and we want them voting. Why would that be, do you think? Why would that be? Well, it's because her story is a story of corruption. That is what it is from the very, very beginning. I mean, you know, she got into, you know, you don't, they're going to attack you for being sexist no matter what, but she slept her way into politics. There's just no question about it. Willie Brown was the mayor of San Francisco. He was an assemblyman in San Francisco. He was also a fixer in San Francisco, and he was a famous gad about what, I don't know what you call him. He's a famous womanizer. He was a womanizer, and he was married, but he was always had a girl on his arm, and one of those girls was Kamala Harris, and he was 60. She was in her 20s, and he helped her get elected DA in San Francisco. While this was going on, you know, sometimes he would show up at parties, Willie Brown, with his wife on one arm, and his girlfriend on another arm, one of them, Kamala Harris. And then when she became DA and they said, well, aren't you connected to this major fixer? She just basically threw him overboard. She said, his career is over. I will be alive and kicking for the next 40 years. I don't owe him a thing. So she's a tough character. He was the only DA. This is from Peter Schweitzer, Profiles in Corruption, Abuse of Power by America's Progressive Elites, is his book. She was the only DA in the top 50 metropolitan cities who did not bring charges against Catholic clergy for sexual abuse. I mean, this was a major, major scandal. It was going on everywhere. It was going on all over the country, and in every major city, they were bringing charges against these people, but not Kamala Harris. I mean, this is really her history, and it goes on, and I'll keep talking about it because this is the way I think Trump should go. You know, they've come after Trump with everything, and seriously, they have nothing. They have absolutely nothing on them. The Russian thing was a hoax. The Ukraine thing was a nothing burger. Everything they've brought against him has turned out to be untrue, you know, and it's really interesting about him because you know how I feel about Trump. I'm not sure I would, trust him with a lot of business deals, but apparently he plays by the rules. He's always played by the rules. He's never gone around a judge. As a president, he's never gone around a judge. He's never violated the Constitution. They don't really have anything on him, and God knows they've tried, whereas Kamala Harris is openly dirty, and that's the tack I think Trump should take. He should pile up the evidence and really bring it to her, because I think he can beat them with that, since she is, of course, going to be the president if they get elected. So this goes on. The stuff about her corruption goes on. She was California Attorney General. And this is kind of a complicated story. I don't want to get too much into the deep weeds, but there were a chain of hospitals, 6 hospitals that were insolvent, that had been run by the Catholic Daughters of Charity, and a new healthcare place wanted to come in and buy them up and keep these hospitals open to serve California. It was Prime Healthcare Services, it was called. And they made an $840 million bid for these 6 hospitals. But the problem was that Prime Healthcare was the only bidder that agreed to assume the hospital's $300 million liability. I don't want to get too much into this, but the point is they were the only ones who were going to do it, but they wouldn't agree with the Service Employees International Union, United Healthcare Workers West. They wouldn't agree to let them come in with a free hand and unionize. So the union went to Kamala Harris and she pulled all this dirty stuff. She put all these poison pills into the deal. She wanted to require 24-hour nursing, surgery, anesthesia, laboratory, stuff that hospitals couldn't afford. And she exploded this deal so that California lost the hospitals in service to her friends, the unions, right? And was she getting money for this? Was she getting, obviously that this is the thing that's happening. This is the way her kind of politics works. It works by donations. As proof of this, take a look at another story. And this story has always really, I've always found this story particularly upsetting. When she was Attorney General, remember this guy, David DeLayden, I think his name is. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And he went in and he got secretly recorded videos of Planned Parenthood officials discussing how to sell body parts, basically. And he put this out. And so instead of investigating Planned Parenthood, she went after the guy. She went after the guy who got the videos. It's an amazing story. I did one of my funniest videos. You can still find it. It was so raw that they actually wouldn't put the name of the Daily Wire on it because it was just so raw about what these Planned Parenthood people were doing. Go and see if you can find it because it really is funny. But But Kamala Harris had close ties to Planned Parenthood organizations. She had received Operation Rescue, a pro-life organization, has gotten documents that showed that she received over $81,000 into her attorney general campaign coffers. And so instead of investigating Planned Parenthood selling body parts, she went after Biden. She went after Biden. Here he is on Fox talking about this. Cut 6.
While she was running for U.S. Senate, while Planned Parenthood in California was contributing to her political campaign, did she recuse herself from the Planned Parenthood investigation? No, she didn't. She consciously and willfully involved herself directly and personally in the Planned Parenthood case. She had an in-person meeting with 6 Planned Parenthood executives from California in Los Angeles 2 weeks before the raid on my apartment.
And then he talks about the way she came after him. Is cut 7.
Kamala Harris, in my experience, I've been on the receiving end of her abuse of power and her pattern of targeting Americans who have viewpoints that disagree with her own, targeting them and using her powers of office to try and punish them for viewpoints that disagree with hers. If you were an animal rights activist, you could do undercover video to expose how animals were being treated. And Kamala Harris praised those activists and used that video for her agenda as Attorney General. But if you were an undercover journalist investigating Planned Parenthood and investigating the abortion industry, trafficking baby body parts, then Kamala Harris wanted to silence you, wanted to intimidate you, and wanted to make sure that your message was punished and didn't get out there to the public.
So she sleeps away into office. She doesn't prosecute corrupt priests. She doesn't prosecute police officers either who have stepped over the line. She goes after, she scotches a deal that would keep hospitals around for a union, to serve a union. And then she goes after a journalist, essentially, who gets the dirt on Planned Parenthood because she's getting $81,000 in donations from Planned Parenthood. This is a dirty bird, as we used to say. This is a really soiled person. And you can talk about, oh, she's a woman and oh, she's this color or that color, but you can't defend against corruption. Corruption is the worst thing in politics because it trumps policy. You know, policy can't do what policy is supposed to do if the organization that's running it is corrupt. If the politicians are corrupt, it doesn't matter what policies you have. That was the thing. That's how Giuliani transformed New York. And Mayor Koch before him helped transform New York, not as much as Giuliani, but they did it because they were both incorruptible. Koch was more of a liberal, though he became more conservative over time. Giuliani was a conservative, but they were both incorruptible, and that's a big deal. This is a corrupt person. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Andrew Klavan Show. If you did, go ahead.
Do you know that Kamala is a token? Do you know that nobody wanted to endorse her? Not even Obama wanted to endorse her because she's incompetent. Nobody wanted her in the position, but they did it because she was black. That's an insult. That means you're not intelligent enough. That means you're not quick enough. That means you're not smart enough. That means you're not even equipped. You're just black. And it works. And I know that I have been laying low politically because, again, I've been indicted. Understand something. I've been indicted by the Biden administration as a black woman for standing against the murder of innocent children, including and especially because they take up the biggest margin, black babies, okay? So now Biden has stepped down. Right. And I have been laying low. I've been like, listen, I'm not saying nothing. I'm going to just live my life. I'm in Vegas. I'm about to go to the buffet. I'm just trying to eat. I'm trying to be at Sphere. And I'm trying to be at Flyover Vegas, enjoying my little life with my husband before sentencing. But I have to say something. Let me explain something to you. And I'm speaking to the black community. I have to. I'm speaking to the black community, and I'm going to keep it a buck. If you, in your heart, feel like, oh, they're going to put up Kamala, I'm going to vote for Kamala, you are telling me how ignorant you are when it comes to politics, not as a person, because just because you are ignorant according to politics doesn't mean you're an ignorant person, but you are very ignorant according to politics. And I'm going to tell you why. And a lot of people can get offended, but I don't care. I'm going to be honest with you. Okay? Kamala, number one, has never been for the Black community. I want you to understand something. Kamala has played a part, just like Joe Biden, in persecuting and putting African-American people in jail by the droves. Droves. Okay? When it comes to drug crime, she has treated drug crime as if it was murder. Okay? And then on top of that, let me explain something to you. The only reason why Kamala is a vice president in the first place is because she's Black. It is not because she is qualified. It is not because she is competent. It is because she's Black. Now, why should you be offended? You would think, oh, well, yeah, we Black people. We supposed to support our Black folk. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let me explain something to you. You should be offended beyond report because of the fact that somebody is willing to put someone in a seat for their color, even when they're not qualified to do a favor for you. Let me explain to you how the last 4 years have went up 3, coming into this 4. Let me explain something to you. So for the first three years, Kamala has not cared about the Black community. Okay? Kamala and Biden have been doing everything in their power to support illegal immigrants. They have been coming in this country. They're getting your benefits. They putting their kids, these illegal immigrants are going into your kids' schools. They in the hood. They're taking over. You're no longer relevant. They're taking over, okay? But then on top of that, okay, they're giving them money. They're giving them credit cards. I mean, they're booking them, taking them. You got immigrants coming straight out of Mexico living better than you did, and your ancestors done built this country up. Boo. Let me explain something to you. That's how valuable you are to the Democrat community, okay? But now, boom. Year 4. It's election time. Y'all, we ain't really did nothing for these niggas. I guess we got to do something. Let's call up Kirk Franklin, and he comes to the White House. Kirk Franklin went on that stage with them tight shorts or tight suit and that extra low button top that he wears on stage. And he danced, and he got a check. And that was for you. They paid him to please you. That's how important you are. When Hillary wants to campaign, she don't actually focus on issues in the Black community that are needed. She says, oh, I got hot sauce in my bag, boo. Are you pandering to us? Is it working? Oh, y'all forget. Your memory is terrible. Y'all forget. She said, is it working? That's how valuable you are as a vote. That she don't even got to invest to get your vote. She don't even have to work and put the agenda in and start to show proof to get your vote, Black woman, Black man. You so special to be Black. You so special to be Black that you don't even get no benefits for it. We'll just put Kirk Franklin in and let him dance for the day. That'll do. Oh, the Mexicans, we're going to invest in them. We're going to have them come from the border. We're going to do everything in our power for them. But for you niggas over there, y'all good. Let me explain something to you. Y'all don't understand the amount of racism that you co-sign. You look crazy. These people see you as animals and dogs. They tell you it's raining and are pissing on your head. And you sit there and you let them. And it blows my mind. Okay? Blows my mind. Let me explain something to you. I have never in my life dealt with racism. People are like, oh, technically it's systematic. Systematic racism means it's supposed to be racism there in the system, but you can't see it because it's so intertwined in the system. Let me explain something to you. I did not experience racism until the day Joe Biden used Letitia James, a Black attorney general, along with Damian Williams, a Black FBI head of FBI agency, and they indicted me for standing against the abortion murder of Black kids. Do you know the agent that they used to investigate me was a Black man? He has an African name. Do you know that they used their tokens to go after Black people that got out of line? They used the guys in the house in line cleaning the bathroom to get the ones out on the field trying to wake people up to know that this is slavery and this is bondage. Do you know that? Do you know that Kamala is a token? Do you know that nobody wanted to endorse her? Not even Obama wanted to endorse her because she's incompetent. Nobody wanted her in the position, but they did it because she was black. That's an insult. That means you're not intelligent enough. That means you're not quick enough. That means you're not smart enough. That means you're not even equipped. You're just black. And it works. And no, it's not benefiting the entire black community. No, let's just put a token in because that's enough of them. They'll struggle to the end as long as they can look up at that token for the rest of their life. How? Listen, I promise you I wasn't going to say nothing. That's DoorDash right there. I wasn't going to say nothing. But you might have to go to the front. I think your food is there. In a second. They dropping it off at the lobby. Let me say something to you. I am so tired of the black community and y'all low standards. The standards are so low. You are so low in your standards, that even in your vote, that we are looked at as a joke. Do you understand other communities are coming in and laughing at us? You have Russians and Ukrainians and people from all these different countries coming in. They're getting trade jobs. They're starting businesses. They're buying houses on the block. They've been here for 10 years and we're scrambling to the top. And yet we don't stand for it when it really matters. We just want to see somebody that look like us and we good. Oh, she looked like us. That works. That's your standard? That works? Oh, she looked like me. She's black. First of all, she's not, but I ain't even gonna go there with you. For your sake, for your peace and comfort, yeah, she's black. But guess what? She don't give a damn about you. She don't give a damn about you. She didn't petition for nothing regarding the black community since she's been up there. But you know what, Kirk Franklin? Pull up. Because you know we ain't really been doing that for 3 years. Go ahead, pull up and sing, dance, twirl. That's what they see y'all as. Dance, twirl, sing, nigga. I'm going to say it straight up because it's a hard thing to hear. But you need to hear it. You're out of line when you speak the gospel of Jesus, when you speak the truth, when you say that abortion is murder, when you say that these things are wrong, when you say that homosexuality is wrong, you are out of line. Who are you to say what's wrong and what's right and who's the true and living God? Go dance. Go dance. Get your leotard, get on stage, put on your heels and shake your butt. Get your long weave, boo. Y'all bragging about who got the longest weave. They over here crossing $1 million transactions under your nose on your dollar. Go dance. Go shake. Go dribble the ball. Go ball out. Go play that basketball, boo. Go hit a football. Go hit a touchdown and shut up. Hit a touchdown and shut up. That's what you do. What do you mean? You out here standing in front of an abortion clinic like you somebody. You gotten a little too uppity, nigga. You out of line. Let me tell you something. Had I have really been out here committing crime for real, stealing and being a detriment to this nation for real, a danger on the streets, I would have got a pat on my wrist. Are you kidding me? They would have said, all right, girl, go ahead. You out here acting up. Go live your life. They wouldn't have did nothing. Federally indicted, secret grand jury meeting to put out all the videos of me standing in front, preaching the gospel, not with a bat, not with a gun, nothing. Just standing there preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, declaring the truth and saying that abortion is murder. Now you get a federal indictment. You got the FBI watching you. Do you know the FBI been watching me since 2019? I went to Africa and back. I went to Nigeria. They recorded when my baby was born. They documented when my baby was born. They documented when we went to Nigeria for a missions trip. They documented when me and Ricky got married. They documented everything I did because I was a nigga out of line. That's what y'all want. Y'all vote people in and y'all don't understand. You're voting in your image of being a nigga in line. That's what you do when you vote Democrat. That's what you do when you dare decide, oh, I'm going to support Kamala. That's what you are. You're literally a sheep. You're a sheep, and you're not even a good sheep. At least a sheep follows a good shepherd, a shepherd that feeds them and takes care of them. Y'all don't even care. Y'all shepherd got y'all blind, naked, deaf, and dumb, robbing your country, sending your money to Ukraine. Kamala ain't petitioning for you. You kidding me? People in Ukraine ain't living good right now. I'm seeing a bunch of Ukrainians over here, a bunch of Mexicans all in my neighborhood. It's mad Mexicans in Uruguay. Mad Mexicans. I ain't never seen this many Mexicans in Uruguay. You got Ukrainian people all over the place. They two-stepping, living good. We live in a nice neighborhood. We got them moving up with us. They moving in our neighborhood. Chilling. What? Living good, eating good, vegetarian with the brown rice. And now, it's election year, you guys. Mind you, they didn't even want to put Kamala in. They really didn't want her. She was the last result. How does that make you feel, black woman? You're supposed to be so strong. You're supposed to be so intelligent. And I'm not saying that you're not. But doesn't it insult you that somebody is only in a position that they're in because they're black and they're a woman and they need the vote? They could give a dang about anything else? That she's intelligent? That she's smart? That she's a great speaker? She's a joke. She make black women look like a joke. She make us look like we goofy. Yeah, you know, what's the line she say? She repeat the same sentence 10 different times because she don't know what she's saying, probably because she's nervous. But guess what? When she was in there putting them niggas in jail, she wasn't nervous being a prosecutor. She knew exactly what to say. She knew exactly what to do. She ain't that innocent. She ain't that innocent. Sorry. Do a little bit more research. Be a little bit more confident in this season. Don't be a dummy. Don't follow the sheep. Do better. Do better. Please, I'm begging you. Do better.
There's a family feud on the Democrat side.
Oh, gosh. Do you remember when Kamala Harris, she had that radio interview with Breakfast Club? It was released. We talked about it. She admitted that she smoked pot when they asked her if she was pro legalizing marijuana. She said, of course I smoked marijuana. Half my family's from Jamaica. Are you kidding me? Well, her own father had a problem with that. But listen to what she said on the Breakfast Club.
They say you oppose legalizing weed.
That's not true.
I know.
She did.
And look, I joke about it, half joking. Half my family's from Jamaica. Are you kidding me?
You ever smoked?
I have.
Okay.
And I inhale. I did inhale.
Okay. It's real hysterical for the former attorney general of that state to talk about doing something illegal, laughing about it, giggling about it, and trying to get some traction for it. Among the people that were upset by it, her dad, Donald Harris from Jamaica, an economics professor at Stanford University, says this: my dear departed grandmothers, as well as my deceased parents, must be turning in their grave right now to see their family's name, reputation, and proud Jamaican identity being connected in any way, jokingly or not, with the fraudulent stereotype of pot-smoking, joy-seeking, and in pursuit of identity politics. Man.
Nah. That's very shocking that her daddy, we got to really understand what daddy is saying. Her daddy told, I didn't tell you to be associating yourself with weed and them black Americans over there. He don't want his name tied to any of that. He's a strong Jamaican brother. Now for a Jamaican brother, that's kind of crazy to me. Bob Marley, one of the most legendary Jamaicans, and this brother here pretending like saying anything about Jamaica and pot is so disrespectful. Now this boule Greek freak, big Greek freak, is trying to disrespect us over here and telling Kamala, watch it now. You stay in your place. You an Indian. You don't know nothing about Jamaica. That's what he's telling Kamala. You as an Indian, you don't know nothing about Jamaica. That's what her daddy told her.
Man, that what a blast at his daughter who wants to be the next president.
No kidding. He added, and he had sent this statement to Jamaica Global Online. He said, speaking for myself and my immediate Jamaican family, we wish to categorically disassociate ourselves from this travesty. The campaign had no comment as of yesterday. It should be pointed out that Kamala Harris's parents divorced when she was younger, and her mother raised her and her sister.
But her father still had a big part of her life, according to reports.
Today she'll be with Al Sharpton in New York City, trying to.
That ain't gonna work. Revolutionary salute, family.
I also want to close with one message to the Democrat Party. End this farce that Joe Biden is going to be your nominee. We know he's not even the president of the United States. He's a puppet for the managerial class. So have the guts to step up and be honest about who you're actually going to put up so we can have an honest debate. Biden should step aside, end his candidacy now so we can see whether it's Newsom or Michelle Obama or whoever else.
All right,
just
Mr.
tell us the
Ramaswamy,
truth so we can have an honest debate.
Ambassador.
Very bad day for President Biden. What do you think?
Look, I think the number one takeaway, Trace, is this. Joe Biden will not be the nominee. I said this last year. People dismissed it as some type of conspiracy theory. Today, I think it became that much more obvious. Play this out. Biden's own DOJ and special counsel is effectively releasing a report that undermines the case for him to actually be a candidate for the U.S. presidency, right as Biden's poll numbers are cratering. We have to do the math, skate to where the puck is going. Not fall for the deflection, but I do think what they're planning for is to sideline Biden as the nominee, trot in a different puppet instead. That's the most significant takeaway from tonight.
Okay, we've got huge breaking news right now on Twitter. Apparently, President Biden is saying that he will step aside as a candidate. This is just coming across on social media right now, breaking news, and will address the country later this week about next steps. He intends to fulfill the remainder of his term.
Welcome back, Courageous Army. Thanks so much. Welcome back to the channel. Anybody who's new here, please bear with me. I am traveling, but I had to get this video out because we've got serious breaking news. Joe Biden, the White House anyway, has issued a statement saying that Joe Biden is dropping out of the race. So this is huge. We predicted it. We've been talking about it. We really hoped that Biden's narcissism and his arrogance would keep him in the race a little while longer, but I wanted to get this out. Got a couple videos to play for you, but first I wanted to show the actual statement that the White House released. So here you can see the actual statement. This was a letter issued. Now, the very interesting thing about this entire situation about Joe Biden dropping out is that Joe Biden has said nothing to the public. He said nothing to the media. There wasn't a press conference. There wasn't a live announcement. This has all been done very shadowy with a letter. And it's actually been done in two separate phases. Now, the first, I think, was completely pre-planned.
What's crazy is go back and remember Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, they were saying Joe Biden will be dropping out the race this weekend. They said that. And then Joe Biden kept coming out and said, I ain't dropping out. Then all of a sudden, Sunday, this letter was released. They saying Joe Biden never said he was dropping out, that the Obama and Pelosi and the deep state put this letter together and told Joe Biden, oh, yeah, you dropping out because now it's too late. Joe Biden can't come out and say, hey, I never said that.
And I think this was issued under the White House title. I think it was issued by the deep state, by the insiders, by the Democrat elites led by Obama and Pelosi and others. In the letter, you'll notice that Joe Biden basically says, hey, I'm out. But I wanted to draw attention to something here at the bottom. For now, let me express my deepest gratitude to all those who worked so hard to see me elected. I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner, blah, blah, blah. And that's it. He's out. Now, I don't even know if Joe Biden knows that he's officially dropped out of the race now, officially, unofficially, or unofficially, officially.
No.
I'm not really sure because Joe Biden hasn't said anything to the American public. All they've done is issue this letter. Now, shortly after that, just a few minutes after, realize that there was not a letter, but this gave way to a post on X. And we can see here, my fellow Democrats, I have decided not to accept the nomination to focus all my energies on my duties as president, blah, blah, blah. My first decision was to pick Kamala Harris as my vice president, and that's the best decision I've ever made. Today, I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Okay, so shortly after this letter is issued, there's an X post where Biden or whoever is posting this throws their support behind Kamala Harris. Now, this is huge because I don't think this was the plan of the Democrat elites from the start. I think they had a different plan, and we're going to get into that. But first, I want to jump into a video, just give you some more details, some more flesh out some of the details around Joe Biden's dropping out of the race. Check this out.
Who's now President Biden saying, quote, I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. So Not clear if whether they've been watching the coverage, seeing that, no endorsement. But there you have President Biden saying he fully supports and endorses her to be the Democratic nominee of the party this year.
Voila, had to do it. And I mentioned earlier, it's not just because she was voted on as part of this ticket. You know, millions of Americans who support the Democrats didn't just vote for in the primaries for Joe Biden. They voted for Biden Harris. So in some senses, he almost had to do it. But as I mentioned to you earlier, if you were to bypass a top ranked woman on the ticket for somebody else, a woman of color, as you heard our colleague Britt Hume mention, I just don't think that's a tenable way to go for this party, not just in this election, but it could damage them for years to come. They have to go with Harris. That's still my prediction. And if they choose not to, in spite of the president now endorsing her fully, I think it could create massive problems for them moving forward. We'll see. And we'll see if, in fact, she gets that nod and picks an interesting and compelling VP.
Absolutely fast. Absolutely crazy. Listen to this now. So, and again, for everybody watching, I apologize. I don't have my normal setup. I'm up. I'm in the mountains. I'm traveling, but I had to get this video out. So Joe Biden has dropped out via letter. 5 minutes later, he issues a statement saying he fully endorses Kamala Harris. Now, I don't know. This is just me. It's purely conjecture. It's my opinion. Did Joe Biden actually issue the letter? I don't know. Joe Biden has not made a public appearance. You would think that if you were officially dropping out of the race for president, you would go on live TV at the White House, at the podium somewhere and say, I'm out. And here's my endorsement, or I'm not endorsing anybody. This very much just reeks of a Democrat elite deep state coup. They've issued a coup against Joe Biden. They wanted him out. He wasn't going to leave. Up until yesterday, Joe Biden said, I'm not leaving. I'm staying in the race. Even yesterday, David Letterman basically said he was going to host a whole campaign of fundraising events for him. So suddenly, Joe Biden flips on a dime and he's out, but he doesn't give any public statements. The letter goes out, but then there's this ex post. This is my gut feel, and I could absolutely be wrong. The only facts I have to back up are the ones that I've just given you. And that is that Joe Biden does not want to exit the race, but he's being forced out by a cabal of Obama and Pelosi and Clinton and others. And so it's his last act of defiance, a spit in the face of the Democrat elites. He issues an ex post where he fully endorses Kamala Harris, the one person they didn't want anywhere near this new ticket. Please see my video called Kamala's Nightmare from just a few days ago, where we detail the fact that the claws were out to get Kamala off of the ticket if Joe Biden stayed in. So suddenly this is all flipped around. Joe Biden is out via letter, but he issues an ex post saying, I fully endorse Kamala, which basically throws the Democrat Party into absolute disarray because it thwarts the plans of the elites who I believe wanted to pick their own two candidates. I don't think they wanted anything to do with Kamala Harris. She is the most unpopular vice president in the history of the United States by poll. She is terrible. She trails Trump in head-to-head polling by 3 points nationally. And that's before the spotlight is on her and laughing Kamala, cackling Kamala, the collage of her ridiculous statements, which she has given to the press over and over again, and she doesn't even have a cognitive disorder to blame it on. Does anybody remember Unburdened by What May Be? Does anybody remember the passage of the significance of the passage of time? Does anybody remember her remarks in Poland, where she literally gave a speech saying, I'm in Poland, a country that's next to Ukraine, which is a country that's next to a much bigger country, Russia, and the much bigger country invaded the much, the woman cannot give a speech. It's ridiculous. I really think she's that dumb. But anyway, they didn't want her anywhere near the ticket. Their plan was to go select two brand new candidates, but now they're stuck because Joe Biden endorsed Kamala, and because she's the sitting vice president, they can't simply throw her overboard. So now the fight goes into the 4 weeks before the convention. Do they accept Joe Biden's endorsement? Because people are already lining up to second Joe Biden's endorsement of Kamala. The entire DEI wing of the Democrat Party is going to line up behind Kamala. But Kamala is not the choice of Obama and Pelosi and others. The Democrat establishment, the elitists, wanted somebody else. They wanted a Newsom. Maybe they wanted a Whitmer. Maybe they wanted a Shapiro. I don't know. But it wasn't Kamala Harris. So this throws a wrench into the plan of the Democrat establishment, and I believe it's Joe Biden's last act of defiance as he gets forcibly pushed out of the nomination because he was not leaving. But now he's out, and I believe he's out against his own free will. Hence, they issued a letter. They did not do a press conference. They did not do a public statement. He's going to give a talk sometime later this week. What is that after they've had a time to massage him over, to work him over? Is that after they've offered him hundreds of millions of dollars as green mail to get him out? I don't know. But this whole thing just reeks of deep state fingerprints all over the place. So there you have it. Joe Biden is out via letter. He's endorsed Kamala via ex post. There have been no live statements whatsoever. Kamala has since basically said that she's going to work to earn and deserve the nomination and blah, blah, blah. She's also talked, and one of the first people to get out there and endorse her was Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. Now, be very careful because this could be a formidable ticket. Shapiro is fairly popular. He is the governor of a swing state, Pennsylvania, which Trump currently leads Biden in by at least 3 points. If they could flip one swing state because they pick the governor as vice president, that would drastically help the Democrat ticket. Because right now they're getting swamped in all of the swing states. Trump is running the table on them. Now, that doesn't fix their problems, but at least gives them another path to the White House. So be very careful because Shapiro is actually eloquent. He is a good politician. He's a good speaker. My gut feel is if they can shove Shapiro or somebody like him onto Kamala's ticket and then essentially shove her in the basement like they did Biden in 2020, where she doesn't actually talk, where she doesn't speak, where she doesn't get out there and do the word salad routine, where she looks like a complete imbecile, but they can keep someone like Shapiro talking who is actually cogent and literate and coherent, then there's some games that they can play. But again, I wanted you to know, I wanted you to have the information. So here we are. Again, please forgive.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Breaking Points. We've got Ryan Grimm in for Sagar this morning because Sagar just got married this weekend. Congratulations to Sagar and Jill.
Revolutionary salute to our brother Golden Mask for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, family. Salute.
Brilliant.
Congratulations, Sagar. I'm sure he's bothered to be missing this week.
Yeah.
But if you got to miss it, what better reason?
I have a feeling
than a wedding and a honeymoon.
if Jillian wouldn't instantly divorce him if he was here, he would be here. But we hope he is enjoying with his beautiful bride. And we got some pictures we'll share with you in a minute. But we have a lot to. Oh, there he is. Sagar and Jillian. They did a part Indian portion of the wedding. They did a part Western style portion of the wedding. The picture is absolutely gorgeous. Congratulations to them. Magical evening. And yeah, we hope that he is enjoying and staying away from the news as much as possible. And we expect him to be back here in the studio on Thursday. So there you go.
Yeah, the whole wedding was spectacular. And if you want to do a little special wedding gift for Sagar and Jillian, breakingpoints.com.
There you
Subscribe
go.
to the show. Nothing makes Sagar happier than to see those subscriptions coming in to keep the show going.
I can vouch that is
Yes.
definitely the case. So, and thank you guys so much for supporting us. We've got a few things to get to this morning. A little bit of news going on in this country. Obviously, we're going to bring you all the latest about Biden withdrawing from the 2024 race, the likely ascent of Kamala Harris, although Ryan and I, because we love to fight losing battles, are going to continue to make the case for an open convention because that's just how it is on the left. We also are going to take a look at the Democratic reaction, which was slobbering of Joe Biden and over the top, the Republican reaction, which was total meltdown and freak out. We're going to take a look at not only Kamala Harris, how she's polling, how she may run against Donald Trump, all of those things. Also, those people who, like Barack Obama, who are still making the case for an open process and whether that has any chance of potentially playing out. We're also going to look at who she could pick as her vice presidential nominee. There's already some top names in the running. We'll give you a little bit about them. And then there is so much happening in Israel. We did not want to leave that out of the show as well. ICJ finding that the West Bank settlements are illegal. You also have extraordinary scenes as the Houthis were able to strike near the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv. Israel responding. So that is on a knife's edge. Also, Ryan, you have some really important reporting over at Dropsite News with regards to Israel as well.
Yeah, the National Security Commission there reviewed a plan to basically foist a quote-unquote moderate Muslim government onto Gaza, that it would be basically like a Vichy Gaza
So like a Western puppet kind of deal.
And it's like it's a real plan. We obtained the entire version of it, and we can run through that. Yeah.
Amazing. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in with the latest with regards to Joe Biden. Just to back up, if you've been living under a rock, let's put the letter up on the screen. Joe Biden posting on Twitter this announcement that he would be withdrawing from the presidential race. He says, I will speak to the nation later this week in detail about my decision. As COVID right now apparently sounds like crap, so they decided to do this letter instead of putting him in front of the cameras once again. He says, it has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. While it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. Now, when this letter initially came out, you and I and everyone else, Ryan, were like, oh, he didn't endorse Kamala Harris. That's interesting. Minutes later, he did endorse Kamala Harris. Let's put this up on the screen. This was in a tweet. He says, my fellow Democrats, I've decided not to accept the nomination to focus all my energies on my duties as president for the remainder of my term. My very first decision as the party nominee in 2020 was to pick Kamala Harris as my vice president. It's been the best decision I've made today. I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Democrats, it is time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this. So, Ryan, we have some behind the scenes reporting. We're going to bring in Dave Weigel here in just a few minutes to go through what we know about those final hours that actually pushed Joe Biden into making this decision. But, you know, initial reactions about the extraordinary journey that we've all been through over these past several weeks.
Yeah, quite an oversight to not include Kamala Harris in the initial announcement. And
it seems like they sort of like just didn't think about it and then scrambled to recover, right? Classic.
And there was
Biden
some like, hey, wait a minute, you guys said you were going to endorse us. What happened to that? And like, oh yeah, we're doing that in a second post. Don't worry, here it is. It's coming. But yeah, and we'll talk about this throughout the show. The consolidation around Kamala Harris has been pretty, swift and broad from the Progressive Caucus, the Black Caucus, the New Dems, most state party chairs coming out saying that they're going to move their delegates in that direction. Party leadership, interestingly, Pelosi, Schumer, Jeffries, those types staying out of it at this point and saying that a process needs to unfold. Now, there will be an open convention. There's kind of a misnomer out there. Like, there is no locked-in winner at this point. So there will be an open ballot where delegates are going to be able to vote. There may only be one viable candidate in that. And so how open is it if there's not a race? But we're going to get an actual live vote.
Yeah, and one of the only people who was sort of like mainstream candidate who was flirting with it was Joe Manchin. Donors apparently still loving the Joe Manchin dream, even as he's not even actually a Democrat anymore. But he has come out this morning and said, no, I'm not going to run for president, but also encouraging there to be other contenders and an open process. Just to reflect on how we got here, I think it's very clear, number one, Biden did not want to step down. Number two, he really struggled to grapple with how widespread the fallout was from the debate and just what a problem it was. It also appears from the reporting that Democrats have kind of found a scapegoat for how Biden was in such a bubble. I mean, this is a grown man. He's been in politics a long time. He can read the polls in the New York Times and everywhere else, just like the rest of us can. But we're expected to believe that because one of his top aides, Mike Donilon, was just sort of cherry picking only the data that made it appear like Joe still had a real shot in the race, that he was able to insulate himself and convince himself that the fallout hadn't been so broad and that he wasn't in as detrimental a position as he really was. And according to the reporting from Politico, finally this weekend, first of all, they hadn't even done battleground polling in months, which is insane at this level. Insane. That in 2 months.
See, what the Democrats not going to get away from, it's not that Joe Biden was unpopular. Their policies were unpopular. Kamala can't go to Chicago and New York and push those immigration policies that had those states turning red to begin with. She can't blame that. She can't just say, well, that's Joe Biden. No, that's the Democrat policy. Kamala can't do that. Kamala can't act like those Muslims who said they're not voting for Joe Biden about what's going on in Palestine. They had all the uprising going on with that. What was that going on? In Minneapolis, in Minnesota, you know, a large Muslim population. But you had a lot of people saying they're not voting for Joe. And anytime bringing up Trump and they say, well, Trump be worse, they say it don't matter to them. They say Joe Biden and Kamala were over the genocide in Gaza. They can't get away from they're the ones funding the neo-Nazis in Ukraine. The Ukrainian war is unpopular. Black people, brown people, Asian people from all over America are sick and tired of sending their tax dollars over there. That's not a Joe Biden thing. That's a Democratic thing. She can't walk away from that.
Once they had not done battleground state polling. So finally they bothered to do some battleground state polling. The reason they didn't do it, the implication is pretty clear, because they didn't want to know the answer of how bad it was. Okay, so they finally did battleground state polling. They brought it to Joe Biden. It showed that in every single battleground state, he was losing. Not only that, but in states like Virginia, Colorado, New Mexico, places that they did not think that they were going to have to worry about, the bottom was even falling.
Where the Democrats fucked up, and that's because they corporate was rigging the election against Bernie. And Trump already said that Bernie was the only person with the infrastructure and the popularity, and the youth were backing him. And Bernie could talk that anti-war talk. Bernie could talk that, man, Trump even said he took some of Bernie working man playbook, being for the unions and all that stuff. Republicans never was for no unions. Now they're getting union people because Trump took Bernie playbook because he a chameleon. You see what I'm saying? That's why the Democrats messed up. Until they get somebody to talk that anti-war talk, quit trying to transition babies and all that talk, they're gonna be in a world of trouble politically with their policy for a long goddamn time. They gotta get from up under those policies, that border policy. Joe Biden was too late. He started talking about tough on the border. Some of the Democrats rose up and called him a racist when he did it. It's too late though.
Falling out there. And that was part of the final straw, not to mention the Pelosi's and Obama's and, you know, the very people who helped to consolidate in 2020, who brought him to power, now had formed a cabal against him and were making it all but impossible for him to remain in the race. So with COVID, alone, isolating in Rehoboth, the writing on the wall, he apparently came to this decision.
And the fundraising mattered too. Fundraising had fallen completely off a cliff. They said it reached something like 25% of expectations. This is the time when fundraising is supposed to surge for both parties. And so when they came to them,
they lying when they say the fundraising dropped off. Let me tell you something. I watched every comment section. You can watch it now on CNN, NBC when they talked about Joe Biden. No, none of the Democratic voters wanted Joe Biden to drop out. It's the opposite. They were pissed that Joe Biden was being overthrown. Comment after comment, they didn't like that. They were pissed off. You see, those donors, the people were still donating to Joe Biden. When they say donations was drying up, they talking about the small hats, the big money people who rigged this shit. They told Biden, you ain't getting no 50, 20, $100 million WAPs anymore. That's in election rigging. And Joe Biden and Democrats, they should be ashamed of themselves, because had they got money out of politics like Democratic voters had been saying, quit letting these elections be bought, Joe Biden wouldn't have had to drop out. Had they stood on Democratic principles that they didn't want elections rigged, and saying that a business is a voter, a business is not a voter. A business is a business. If you let a business get a vote, then they can squeeze their employees to vote for a certain party. That's all bullshit. And they could throw unbelievable amounts of money at elections like they just proved to Joe Biden and got his ass up out of office.
It came to him with the polling in New Mexico and Virginia. They would say, look, money that we need to spend in battleground states, we're going to need to spend now in New Mexico and Virginia. and Colorado. Oh, and by the way, we don't have any money.
Right.
And then there was a great line in a Politico article that said Nancy Pelosi had told him early on, we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
Right.
And we gave you about 3 weeks of the easy way.
Yeah, that's crazy. They did
Next week is going to be the hard way.
Yeah.
And if you thought this last 3 weeks was rough, wait until Nancy Pelosi turns the screw, one more notch.
You think Putin not going to bring this up? You think other countries not going to bring this up? Iran, just Maduro in Venezuela, Xi Jinping, they don't want to hear about no election rigging when you just overthrew the Democratic president who the people just voted for him to say, hey, let him run against Trump. Let's see what he got. The elite say, hell no, he got to go. And made him step down. Well, let's see what Joe Biden decides. Joe Biden come out and say, I'm staying. Well, just give him a little time. He said, I don't need no time, I'm staying. Well, no, let Joe rethink. It's just crazy what they did.
I'm very sympathetic to the argument of, this whole process is fundamentally anti-democratic. There's no getting around that.
That's a fact.
But I don't want us to pretend like there was some democratic process that Joe Biden succeeded in. And, this line that he was clinging to, and now Republicans are desperately clinging to, and we'll get to that in the Republican bloc about, 14 million people voted for Joe.
Yeah, see, right. Joe Biden rigged the primaries. You see, it's all come back to bite them in the ass. They rigged the primaries and used black people to do it. Never forget, RFK Jr. was on the ass. He had to leave the Democratic Party because he was too goddamn popular. They ran him out so he couldn't grab the nomination. Because if he was in the nomination, he definitely would beat on Kamala. That's for sure. She can't debate RFK Jr. Okay. Then, because they knew he wasn't popular in the white states, understand this, what did they do? They had his first primary held in South Carolina. So good old Clyburn could say a Joe once again and do that Southern boy black Baptist strategy to build up his base. That's disgusting. That's election rigging. They would have never done it for a black person. If a black person run there, never say, okay, let's take you to your population so you can look real big. Hell no. They would say, that's not democratic. No, it's not democratic. Joe Biden did it.
For Joe Biden. Does anyone really think that if they had an actual process, including debates in a Democratic primary, that we would have ended up where we are? No. That's the whole thing, is that because they blocked any sort of a democratic process from playing out, and the very elites who then, did form this consensus against him, they were the ones who protected him and made it so that he was in there for so long, blocked we're part of this overarching cover-up that blocked the American people from being able to see the reality, number one, and number two, to be able to actually go through a democratic process and have a choice. So that's where we are now. The polls are very clear. There is an overwhelming consensus within the Democratic Party and with the nation at large that they wanted Joe Biden to leave. So, the idea that, this was just elites who wanted to push him out for whatever reason is just not accurate. They were the last ones to actually acknowledge what the truth was about Joe Biden. I mean, we did those word clouds, but long before the debate with JL Partners, and the number one descriptor for Joe Biden in every single partisan breakdown was old. This has long been, along with, genuine concerns about the economy and, dissatisfaction with the direction of the country. But this has been the primary issue for him. And the other place that it's really borne out is the fact that every single other Democrat, literally every Democrat that I've seen polled across the country outperforms Joe Biden.
Right.
Regardless of the whether it's Montana or New York or Pennsylvania, wherever you are, every single Democrat that I've seen polled, and especially swing state Democrats in those.
You see what they keep saying? They keep saying every Democrat polls better than Joe Biden. But what they don't tell you is every one of them lose also. None of them win. And they know that when you're not in the race, you're a better candidate than when you in the race. When people get to really digging into your background, talking about your record, which Kamala is going to fold like a lawn chair when they dig into her record, and Trump get to beating her up. When she get to talking about that black talk, and he shows you talking to black people as a prosecutor, and you wanted slave labor in prison, and you didn't want to let a man go on death row who was innocent till the people forced you to. When all that get brought to the light, and campaign ad after campaign ad, her poll's going to drop.
Senate races has been outperforming Joe Biden oftentimes by double digits. So it shows you that his age prior to the debate performance, which made it so that this, donor group and Pelosi et al. Could no longer deny the reality that was in front of everyone. Prior to that, the American public already wanted a different option. They already were deeply concerned about this man's ability to serve for another 4 years when they already saw very clearly, even in the little tiny glimpses, stage managed glimpses that we got of him. Even in those glimpses, they could tell what a difficult place he was in and how much he had declined.
The reason they don't want Joe Biden to step down immediately, because then Kamala Harris will become president and it all will fall apart before the elections. Once she have to stand there and do that presidential duty, they're gonna be like, oh man, bring Joe Biden back. Somebody who not saying nothing. I'm telling you, man.
Declined even in just the past couple of years.
Yeah, we were going to get an undemocratic process either way.
Yeah.
More than a majority of Democrats did not want Trump. Did not want Biden to run for re-election. Now, a majority of the American people didn't want Trump or Biden. And the political system said, well, that's too bad. That's what you're going to get.
Yep.
And so because there was no democratic process to choose the nominee, in order for there to be some facsimile of democracy, which is pressure from people on elites and on those in power to do the thing that they want you to do, that is what participatory democracy actually means. There was no process left. It was just going to have to be full-on pressure. And if 65% plus of Democrats were not calling for Biden to step aside, then you'd have a much better argument that this is not a fair process. And also, this happens all the time in parliamentary systems everywhere. The leader of the party loses the confidence of the party and of the party's base. They hold a vote in the parliament, no confidence, you're done. Like that's just normal. We don't have that. So they had to hack it, and they hacked it, and it took 4 weeks instead of what it would take in the UK like a week.
Yeah. We managed to get done in a month what every other country gets done in a much faster amount of time. Let's go ahead and put A3 up on the screen, and we can take a look at some of this inside reporting. This is from the New York Times, what happened in the final moments as Biden decided to withdraw. They really set the scene with Biden's diagnosed with COVID, which, by the way, now there's a whole conspiracy theory on the right that he didn't really have COVID. I also love the conspiracy that it wasn't even really him that sent out the letter on Twitter.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, I saw you enjoying that one on Twitter, that it was like, someone who happened to gain control of the accounts, Nancy Pelosi pushing the buttons or whatever, and he just has no idea what's going on. I like that one too. Anyway, they set the scene of him at his house in Delaware, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. And he calls and he says, I need you and Mike at the house on late Saturday afternoon, you being Steve Ricchetti and Mike being Mike Donnellan. These are his two probably longest serving, very close aides. As I said, these are also the two that seem to be getting thrown under the bus right now as, creating this bubble and insulating him and, creating this poll denialism where he had no idea, reportedly, how badly he was losing and how bad the fallout was from the debate. So he says, I need you and Mike at the house. Mr. Biden was on the phone from his vacation home in Rehoboth with Steve Ricchetti, one of his closest advisors. The president was referring to Mike Donnellan as chief strategist. Soon, both men were in Rehoboth, socially distanced from the president, who was recovering from COVID. From that afternoon and far into the night, the three worked on one of the most important and historic letters of Mr. Biden's presidency, his decision to withdraw from his re-election campaign after top Democrats, donors, close allies, and friends had pressured him relentlessly to get out. Also in this report and others, Ryan, they talk about how closely held this decision was. We had gotten some reports. I covered one on our channel about how he may be coming to a decision this weekend. It's looking like he's open to the idea of getting out. He and his aides forcefully pushing back against that, planning campaign events for this week. There was also this nugget that was reported of like, he doesn't want to do this before Bibi Netanyahu comes to town because he doesn't want to give Bibi the satisfaction. So it was looking uncertain. And reportedly, even right up to the minutes before he posts this letter on Twitter and makes it official he is dropping out of the race, his team was still calling delegates to make sure that they were still in for him and still had his support. Kamala Harris herself was not notified until shortly before the decision was made. The entire campaign team was notified, I believe, on like a Zoom call, literally a minute before this all went public. So they really held it as close to the vest as they possibly could until he pressed send, or whoever pressed send on that tweet.
Post.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess impressive discipline. Although, for what? So no reporter like gets the little scoop. Okay.
Right.
I guess who cares? Like at that point. But yeah, I mean, he wants to control how he goes out.
Yeah.
I get it. So good for him. And he pulled it off. And it was a tight set of campaign staff that he told. So a lot of the campaign and White House staff learned on Elon Musk's platform that their man was dropping out.
Yeah. Elon Musk is now throwing $45 million a month at Donald Trump.
Which somebody pointed out, classic VC move to buy at the peak. All these VC guys bought Trump at the peak.
Yeah.
Geniuses.
I loved that too. All right, we've got Dave Weigel standing by to give us more insight into how
congressman who also ran for the Democratic presidential nomination in 2004, 2008, is with us. Scott Tranter from Decision Desk HQ here alongside as well. Congressman, this play we have seen before, right? In 2016, it was Hillary Clinton's turn. I'm with her. It's her turn. She's going to be the first woman. You cannot challenge her, was what came out of the Democratic leadership. How is this not a repeat in the coronation of Kamala Harris? And why are we to believe that it's going to work out any better for Democrats than the coronation of Hillary Clinton?
Well, obviously, things are in process right now. I'm very concerned that the events of the last few days have a resemblance to a coup that was engineered by special interest donors and also certain party leaders. This is not how you have an effective transition of a candidacy. What I see is it was a feeding frenzy in an echo chamber, and it was orchestrated. So where we go from here, who knows?
Where we go from here, who knows? There is an enormous amount of excitement I'm hearing over and over again about Kamala Harris. She's going to be deified by the end of today, or certainly by the end of the week. That said, she's deeply unpopular within the Democratic Party because she's deeply unpopular with Americans. And the fact that she's not going through the primary process, that there is no democratic process inside the Democratic Party, how does she get away from the record of the Biden-Harris administration?
Well, let's slow down here because, first of all, while President Biden has designated her as being a putative nominee, she's supposed to be nominated, and there will be a convention. And while at the moment there's no challenge, remember, everything started with a series of events that followed President Biden's bad performance in a debate. Now, Kamala Harris will not have a debate between until after the convention. But in the intervening time, there'll be more polls taken, there'll be past records reviewed, and if her poll numbers start to sink, something else could happen at the convention. With the process that...
Well, so are you sort of seeing, and I think it's interesting, right, that Obama, Pelosi, and Schumer haven't endorsed Kamala Harris, but there does seem to be this attempt to make her nomination inevitable, right? Like there's not even an attempt to have a conversation because I think there's a lot of people who are worried that if there is a conversation, the issues you just brought up are going to come to light.
Well, first of all, there is no question that this election inevitably is going to be about the economy. And it's going to be about endless wars, about the border, about the driving deficit, about government spying on Americans, about restrictions on freedom of speech. Now, Kamala Harris is going to have to account for, especially for the border policies. And I think President Trump laid down that marker in the debate. I think what we're looking at here is a process that is still in motion. And when you get, we have to see if any other name is offered at the convention, and what are the events that will happen between now and the convention, which could affect the status of her potential nomination. This thing is not over. And I have to say, not as a former Democrat, but as an American, I am really concerned about the way that President Biden's been treated in all of this. I mean, he is president of the United States. We're diminishing the office of the presidency, the way he's being treated. And this is special interest group, party leaders. They're concerned about their own skin. I don't know how much they're concerned about America, but we certainly have to regard that if he is ill, the 25th Amendment, can be invoked. But we've got to be careful about how we treat each other in this, because what we're doing is we're setting up this.
They posted Ben went with the 25th Amendment. He cannot serve. But if they did that, all of them know Kamala Harris will become president of the United States. They're not willing to let that happen. She's not qualified. It's too tough. They just trying to put together the team of puppets to run her campaign. She's not ready.
This frenzy of tearing each other apart in pursuit of power. This is about the American people. It's about their concerns, about their life, about their economy. And it's not just some inner game that's played by party politicians.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to
The Democrats have called themselves the party of democracy, but they ran the least Democratic primary ever. They skipped Iowa, New Hampshire, jumped straight to South Carolina. They killed all primary debates, booted RFK Jr. from
They skip Iowa, New Hampshire. That's very important. That's very important, because it's just what I told you. That's how you rig an election. Biden was unpopular amongst his own white people in Iowa and New Hampshire. Other people was able to run and get some traction. He didn't want that. He didn't want to look like a weak president amongst Democrats. So where did they go? South Carolina, Clyburn, to make him like a strong president, to have black people out there cheering for him. That was disgusting, but that is rigging an election.
From the party because he posed a threat to Joe. Today, RFK Jr. held a press conference to tell Democrats, I told you so.
A year ago, a little over a year ago, when I entered this race, I predicted that President Biden suffered from a degenerative condition that was not going to improve, and that it would make it impossible for him to govern effectively. The reaction of the DNC to that obvious condition was to hide it from the American public and to use their power over the Democratic Party nomination process to make sure that nobody could compete with President Biden in a way that would expose his deficiencies. And as a result, we are where we are today, which is in a period of crisis.
Presidential candidate RFK Jr. joins us now. So, RFK, you ran the right way. You did what you were supposed to do. You're a Democrat. You primaried a Democrat incumbent, and they wouldn't let you. How did they jam you out of this thing?
RFK was stronger than Kamala. She couldn't beat him.
Yeah, I think it was a strategic mistake by the Democrats, Jesse, and you and I have talked about this before. But they got rid of, they changed the primary rules while while we were running the primary. They changed 60 different rules to make it impossible for anybody to challenge Joe Biden. One of the things that you remember that they did to me is I've been campaigning in New Hampshire, so they adopted a rule that said that any political candidate, any Democratic candidate who campaigns in New Hampshire, who steps foot into the state of New Hampshire, that all of their votes would go to the president, all of their delegates would go to the president instead of going to that. And then they shut down the Florida primary. They shut down a bunch of primaries, just said, we're not running them. We already have our candidate. You know, a few weeks ago, President Biden was ridiculing Vladimir Putin, who won 88% of the vote in Russia. And he said, you know, that was a fixed election because President Putin had made sure no adversaries could challenge him, and also that he had fixed the press so the press wouldn't cover his adversaries. Well, the Democratic Party succeeded in doing the same thing. I haven't been allowed on any of the Democratic networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, as you know, Fox has allowed me on, although Fox, people like you have allowed me to speak. You debate me. You give me a platform, even though you don't agree with things that I say. And I think that's the way the media is supposed to work. But the other media networks have forgotten about that.
When you're playing with children, you just change the rules in the middle of the game and just kind of make it up as you go along. You can't do that when it comes to these high stakes. You know how things operate at conventions. There's been a long history of chicanery at these things. You've now have uncommitted delegates. Are we going to see bribery? Are we going to see quid pro quo? Are we going to see ambassadorships promised, donors greased? This is a sprint to grease as many delegates by mid-August as possible.
Yeah, I think, some of that is bound to happen. I think most of those delegates are kind of mom and pop people. They're committed to Biden. They committed originally to Biden. His releasing them, I think a lot of them are probably idealistic people who want to see the Democratic nominee, or terrified of Donald Trump, who want to see the Democratic nominee succeed. But I don't, the indicators now, Jesse, is that the party elites are not really going to let go of the process. And we'll see what happens. The last time, there's a lot of similarities between this election and what happened with my dad's election in 1968. There was a war going on at that time that was very controversial and it was very damaging to our country. There were protesters in the street. The convention was in Chicago. And my father, who was leading, got knocked out by an assassin's bullet, not by a resignation. You, in effect, had an open convention, but the DNC at that time tried to maintain control over it. They put their candidate in, which Hubert Humphrey. There was the convention became riotous, and the riots shocked the American public, and they didn't want anything to do with the Democratic Party after that. And I think a lot of people in the Democratic Party probably should look back to what happened in 1968 and take some caution from allowing the party elites to continue to exercise control over their choices.
That would.
Looks like Kamala Harris is going to be, she will be the nominee. Biden did what was the obvious step down. We kind of saw that coming. If you've been following me, if you've been reading, I'll give you the brief once over. Or reading my Substack, my Political Superfoods Substack, the last article I wrote, I argued the following. The Democrats long knew they were going to get rid of Biden. And they had to set the table first so that they could choose the nominee. And the way they did it was they simply rigged the primaries. In the primaries, they, if you remember, they moved South Carolina to #1 because they thought that would help Biden the most. They then said, we're not going to count New Hampshire. We're not going to count that. They did all this stuff. Then they had a number of states that wouldn't have anybody. Dean Phillips was running, RFK Jr. was running, Marianne Williamson was running. They had a number of states. They would not allow anyone on the ballot but Biden. I mean, they just straight out said, yeah, we know there's 3 other people running, but we're not going to give the voters the opportunity to run for them. We ain't putting their name on a ballot. So What you had was a clear setup, a clearly rigged primary to give it to Biden. But why? You know, why? They could have rigged it other way. Why'd they rig it like that? Because they knew they were going to get rid of Biden. Oops, let me get rid of some of this headroom. They knew they were going to get rid of Biden. They knew at some point they had to get rid of Biden. I mean, you know, let's face it. 2019, I don't know if you recall, Julian Castro very briefly ran for president, and he brought up Biden's cognitive decline in 2019. And they, you know, quickly ushered him out of the room. It was, you know, the worst kept secret in DC. So everybody knew about, you know, his cognitive decline. The alternative media was like making jokes and running clips about it for years, literally years. So the insiders, of course, knew what they dealt with him every day. So what they did was they set it up so that there would be no second place challenger. So that once they did get rid of him, it would be easy to replace him with whoever they wanted, that the ruling elite, factions of the ruling elite could fight it out, and whichever faction won would get their nominee. That's where we are now. So that's why they set up a nice early debate, right? Nobody's ever seen a debate in June. Why would you set up a debate, you know, this early? They set up an early debate so that Biden could display his ineptitude, that he could display his cognitive decline, and then there would become an uproar. Oh no, he's got to go, like something new. The whole thing was set up and staged, and then they could argue back and forth about whether he should go or couldn't go. And let me add this: I even think, as oddly as this is, it's counterintuitive, but I think this is the way it is. A lot of people screamed and yelled when Biden came out and flopped and laid an egg. They said, just a few weeks ago, everybody in the mainstream media was writing articles that said there's nothing wrong with Joe Biden. He's fine. He's perfect. He's sharp as a tack, blah, blah, blah. And now look at him, right? If you think of it in a paradoxical way, that was part of the game. Because if you write articles, he's great, he's sharp as a tack, he's wonderful, right? You want to up the expectations for him. You want everybody to say he's great, he's perfect. Doesn't that kind of put an exclamation mark on his terrible showing? So when you say he's great, he's sharp as a tack, he's wonderful, all of these people that are watching are now, you got two groups. You got one group who supports Joe Biden, who reads it and buys into it and says, yeah, exactly. He's great. He's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with him. He has a stutter, a cold. He's in great shape. You watch, he'll show you. So they have an expectation that he's going to do well. And you know he's going to flop. And when he flops, they're going to go, oh crap, what do I do now? Then you have the Garland Nixons of the world, the alternative media people who are saying, hey, the guy's got some problems. You got to get rid of him. What are you trying? Let's not pretend like this guy's okay. Not you got to get rid of, but you know, let's not pretend like this guy's okay. So then when he flops, the alternative media and the Garland Nixon of the world say, aha, I told you so. Either way, from both ends, you've set up this high expectation that he's fine. You've said he's great, he's fine, he's wonderful, so that when he flops, you get an exaggerated reaction. Everybody screams, aha, look at him. And then you can do what you wanted to do all along. You knew he was going to flop. You did that so he would flop. And you told everybody he's wonderful, he's great, he's sharp as a tack, so that when he flopped, you would put an exclamation mark on his cognitive decline. Everybody would scream about it later. It worked perfectly. Exactly perfectly. He flopped, and the alternative media went, aha, I told you so, just like you knew they would. The people who were saying he was okay went, oh, I guess we got to get rid of him, just like you knew they would. And now the factions of the ruling elite get to argue over who they want. And now you get Kamala Harris. Let's talk about Kamala Harris, about this thing. A couple of things behind the scenes. Let me tell you what I hear. I've heard so-called insiders. Number one, and Obama ain't thrilled with her. She is not his person at all. Right. Number two, she's Clinton's. She's Hillary's person. 100%. She was chosen by Hillary's people. There were some concessions made, and they went with her. There were people that didn't think she should be, but Hillary's people took her to. You can probably read. There's articles where they brought her to the Hamptons, and all of these donors met with her, and they said, "Boom!" They touched her on the forehead with a sword. You are now officially, you know, the VP, and that was it. So there was all kinds of concessions given. Kamala becomes the VP. But there was always a discussion about her competence, about her ability, her political abilities, which we have seen, which we have observed with our very own eyes and ears. And we know, I'll just put it plain, she's a poor politician. You know, I remember, and here's the game. They think they can get away, or thought, I don't know, maybe even think that they can get away with a bad politician. I remember I was interviewing, we were talking about Kamala when she first came out. I was interviewing, I had some guys on, some diehard Democratic Party operatives, blah, blah, blah. And I said, she's a very poor politician. And some guy came out with, well, I think we have to rethink the way we talk about a black female, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, she's a poor politician, I don't want to hear it. Right? What happens here? Let's talk about the obvious. It's the game. The game is when it is beneficial for the ruling elite. They play we've got to support her because she's a black female, a minority female, a diverse female, whatever you want to call her. She's not really black per se. She's kind of mixed, race, whatever. But the truth of the matter is it has nothing to do with her as a politician. Right? You could have a mixed race person that has Down syndrome. Would that might be the nicest, sweetest person in the world, but you probably wouldn't want to elect them president. You probably wouldn't want to have them fly your plane. I mean, you're getting in the 747 and you're flying from New York to San Francisco, and they get on the radio and they say, guess we've got good news. Kamala Harris is going to be flying your plane. And you're like, but she doesn't know how to fly a plane. And yes, but she is a diverse female of mixed heritage, race, blah, blah, blah. What's wrong with you, you racist misogynist? And your answer is, I don't want to die. I get on this plane. I don't care. Give me somebody that can fly a plane. I don't really care about their race, age, none of the above. I want somebody who's really good at flying a plane to take off in New York and to land in San Francisco safely. See, when you're, imagine a football game. What do you want? Well, we're going to have our goalkeeper. Really? Your goalkeeper? Well, they got to block the soccer ball coming in at high speed. Well, Kamala Harris. I don't know Kamala Harris ever played soccer. She doesn't. But she is a diverse female of Indian and African American and Jamaican and blah, this kind of heritage, that kind of heritage. I don't care. We're going to lose 900-0. They're going to kick the soccer ball past her 100 times in a row. Right? She's like 57 years old or something. That ain't a good idea to play her right? That's the game. We're supposed to ignore the issue of competency. Why? Well, she's a diverse black female. She's a diverse female, blah, blah, blah. And what happens? Here's the thing about it. Will you vote for her? If you say no, it couldn't possibly have anything to do with ideology. It couldn't have anything to do with the fact that you're unhappy about the direction of the country, or you're not a Democrat, you don't like her party, you don't like anything. It couldn't be that. It's got to be two things. You can't say you're not going to vote for her because, well, I'm not going to vote for her. Aha, it's because she's a woman. Aha, it's because she's a diverse female of color, whatever. I don't even know what they're calling her, to be honest. I don't even know what the game is, right? But whatever. So it is a way that as the neoliberal, neoconservative, as the imperial masters always get, the game they play is a game to hit you over the head with something. Right? It's never to work out a deal with you, to talk with you, to, maybe try to come to some kind of agreement with you. No, it's do what we tell you, or we're going to hit you over the head with a blunt object. And the blunt object is, you going to vote for Kamala Garland? Nah. Oh, it has to be because you're a misogynist. Yeah, okay, whatever. No, either that, or it's because you're a racist, white supremacist, in fact. You don't want a diverse female of color, female of color to get elected, right? That's the setup. And I say, yeah, but I'm a lefty. I'm actually pretty far lefty, and I'm not aligned with her ideologically, and I do not believe in the same politics and position and way forward and all that stuff as she does. That's beside the point. That's not, you just don't like women empowered, blah, 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 right? But let me say this. And everybody knows me that knows Garland Nixon's a lefty, but there are a lot of people that are of other ideologies, various ideologies, that are willing to listen to Garland Nixon as a lefty, because my ideology does not define me from the context of how I analyze politics. It does in a way, But overall, I just try to figure out what's fair, what's reasonable, what the people in power are trying to do, and whether I like it or not, whether I'm on board with it or not, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. So it's like this. You have to support her because she's a diverse female of something or other, color or whatever, right? And then I bring in the obvious. What about Clarence Thomas? You know, the people who are telling me that I have to support her because she's a diverse female, blah, blah, blah. And I say, okay, I'm a lefty. My ideology doesn't align with Clarence Thomas. He's an ultra conservative, right? And therefore, probably, you know, it doesn't any more align with him than it does with align any more with him than it does with her. I'm a lefty. You know what I mean? I mean, no, I'm not down with that stuff. You know, it's just not who I am. It's like you're asking an Eagles fan to, you know, vote for the Giants as the best team of the decade. They're an Eagles fan. That ain't who they are. They don't like the Giants, right? And it's I'm not saying this from the perspective of teams, but you could look at it that way. My ideology is left. It doesn't align with the Democrats. It doesn't align with the Republicans. It doesn't align. I see the Democrats and the Republicans as part of a rotten imperial system that goes around the world, starting wars, overthrowing governments, assassinating people, interfering with elections. That's what the U.S. does all over the world, lying to its citizens, propagandizing its citizens. If American citizens understood the foreign policy of their government, they would vomit and reject it if they understood it. Almost every one of them would be like, really? But I thought we were the good guys. Okay, so a country, a government that has to lie to its citizens nonstop to hide its true machinations worldwide, you know, come on. You expect me to support that? No, I'm for telling them the truth. Tell them the truth. If that's what you do, if you're going to go assassinate people, overthrow governments, start wars, just say to your people, that's what we're doing, and let them make a decision. But instead, the U.S. government has to have the illusion of democracy, the illusion that you're actually choosing the people and that they're going to represent you. It's a joke. But unfortunately for America, you've got a lot of people who are the punchline, who believe they think that the government, they think they're choosing a candidate. We've got to get behind that candidate or this candidate. They don't understand the concept of Bonapartism. Bonapartism was not Napoleon Bonaparte. Actually, it was his nephew who was a politician. Bonapartism, the concept of Bonapartism is simple, okay? You've got the ruling elite, you've got the working class down here. So let's say you've got two factions in a ruling elite that are at war. Well, there's only, their small group. What do they have to do? They each have to convince a section of the working class, right? A segment of the working class to support them. So they come out, and this section of the ruling elite, who means to screw the working class over, it comes up with a narrative, and a certain section of the working class support them. And this fraction of the ruling elite, they come up with their own plan, and they get a different segment of the working class to support them. So you have these two factions of the ruling elite who are screwing the working class, but they divide the working class into segments to fight each other on behalf of the ruling elite. That's the game. They playing that game. I understand. I understand the Republicans don't mean me any good. I understand the Democrats don't mean me any good. I understand they're both going to lie to me about foreign policy. They're going to lie to me about what they do, and then they're going to do things that are detrimental to me and people in my class. That's the game. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, I'm laughing at those who are now like, we've got a woman of color. Really? Okay, why didn't she take Clarence Thomas as her VP? And then you can have a woman of color and a black vice president. How great would that be? And those same people will go, not Clarence Thomas. He's a right-wing, crazy conservative guy. And I'd say, well, according to your logic, we're supposed to choose by race and sex, right? Why is it that when it comes to Kamala Harris, we're supposed to choose by race and sex, but when it comes to Clarence Thomas, we're supposed to use ideology? I got an idea We're supposed to, reject him because of his ideology. To which I'll say, I got an idea. I'll reject both of them because their ideology. I'm not going to go to pick both. I'm not going to say, in the instance of Kamala Harris, I'm going to pick her because of race and sex. In the instance of Clarence Thomas, I'm going to reject race and sex, and I'm only going to pick him based on his political ideology. I'm going to use the opposite. How about if I do the other way? How about if I just flip it and say, I would ask those who are making that argument, why don't I flip it? Let's logically explore. Let's do an intellectual exploration here, an exercise for one moment. Let's flip that, right? Ask the same person who says we've got to support her because she's a sexist, race, a female of color, blah, blah, blah. Oh, we've got to reject Clarence Thomas because of his ideology. I'd say, would it be okay if I flip it? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to judge Clarence Thomas based on his race and sex, and I'm going to judge her based on ideology. Let's do that. He's a black man of color, whatever. Guess I've got to support him. He's the next Obama, right? Remember, we're dropping ideology now. Now, let's go to Kamala Harris. I got to reject her. Why? Because when I look at her ideology, I'm opposed to it. She's a Zionist. She's pro-war. She's supporting these things in the Democratic Party that I strongly oppose. I'm opposed to Zionism. I'm opposed to war. Well, then I can't support her. Okay? No, can't do that. So what they're doing is this. The people that are arguing for her is saying, they're saying this. When I tell you, see, this is what it comes down to it. When the ruling elite gives you the orders, you're to evaluate politician A, Kamala Harris, by race and sex. You're supposed to support her because of her sex and race. That's what you're supposed to do. Okay, can I apply that standard to Clarence Thomas? No. You have to apply a different standard to Clarence Thomas, and you have to evaluate him based on his ideology. Can I reverse that? No. You can only use it as we told you. It is opportunistic. When they tell you to use a particular standard to evaluate, that's what you got to use. You got to use the one you're told when you're told to use it. And we're not supposed to look at it and say, well, gee, that's inconsistent. And they'll say, shut up. Of course it's inconsistent, but we're in charge and you're not. Don't you get a good feeling? You're a minority. Don't you get a good feeling? You want to support minorities. Don't you get a good feeling? I'm not into politics for a good feeling. I got an ideology here. I got things I want to accomplish. I think I got things I want to happen. If I'm going to support as I've said many times, it's like championship wrestling here. You know, it's like you go into championship wrestling, you know the good guys ain't good guys, and you know the bad guys ain't bad guys, but you get a good feeling. I'm on the side of the good guys, and okay, brother, I'm going to beat up the Iron Sheik, and you're okay, good, great, I feel good, and I'm opposing the bad guys. That's all it is. They give you the illusion of democracy. They give you the illusion of supporting a woman of color based on race and color. At the same time, they tell you do not use that standard unless we tell you to. What happens if she picks another woman of color? You know what they're going to say? Hey, okay, well, great. I picked her. Let me say this. What would happen if Trump had chosen, I don't know, Nikki Haley, who's Indian also, right? She's all Indian. Kamala's part Indian. What would happen if Trump had picked her, right? The same people would have said, she's a woman of color, we've got to support Kamala Harris. Okay, well, Trump picked a woman of color, kind of the same color. She's Indian. Can we support her too? No, she's a right-wing lunatic. Oh, wait a minute. We've got two women, both of them of Indian descent. But when it comes to this one, we're supposed to support her because she's of Indian and Jamaican descent. When it comes to this one, we're supposed to ignore the fact that she's of Indian descent and use ideology only as the standard of which we evaluate her, right? There's an inconsistency here. Why do we have that inconsistency? Because you're being had, because you're being lied to, you're being took, hoodwinked, bamboozled. As Malcolm X said, the wolf is over there looking scary, and they show you the fox. They both want to eat you, but the fox kind of looks like he's smiling. If you look at a fox's mouth, he looks like he's smiling at you, right? So they show you normally you wouldn't go to the fox. Hey, I ain't going to the fox. He's going to try to eat me. They show you the wolf. Oh, that's pretty scary. You know, the fox don't look so bad now. That's the game. And we're supposed to ignore ideology. I'm supposed to ignore that people were running around screaming Genocide Joe, that Joe Biden couldn't go anywhere. Everywhere he went to fundraisers or whatever, people were outside with signs. Genocide Joe, they're holding up their signs. You're committing a genocide. I have tears in my eyes every day when I go online and I see pictures of children blown to smithereens, arms and legs blown off, whole families gone dead. As I see the Zionists in Israel dropping bombs on a tent city, saying to people who they're starving to death and bombing innocent civilians, the genocide they're committing, saying to these people, take all of your stuff out of that area that we just bombed, the few of you that survived, and all of you go to that area there and set up your tents. And they're like, but there's a big red X on that area. Kind of looks like somebody's targeting you. You'll be safe there. They go to that area. Israel flies over a plane, drops a gigantic bomb on the red X, kills everybody there. People who aren't around, who are around the edges of the explosion, they get their arms and legs blown off, they get burnt, disfigured, maimed, all of the above. And I gotta go online and see that every day. And I'm sitting there, Dale, every day with tears in my eyes. What the hell am I looking at? People starving, they're skinny. What am I? My God! And I look at it and then I say, could there be a country? Could there be an ideology? Could there be a group of people more evil than this? No. And that includes Joe Biden. And that includes Kamala Harris. And now I'm supposed to overlook that Kamala Harris is party to a genocide, murdering and slaughtering men, women, and children. I'm supposed to suddenly get joyous. She's a woman of color. She's genocidal. She's a genocide. And let me tell you something that's going to happen that I firmly believe. Because, you know, in my professional life, I have to be an unbiased analyst, and I am. I think I'm pretty good at it. Really, on this YouTube, I'm pretty unbiased. I call it like it is. I just put a little emotion in it. The real me comes out, right? But analyzing this thing, like so many other things that happen in politics. Let me give you an example. When 1965, an apartheid United States, totally apartheid country, they passed the Voting Rights Act. So black people are now, you know, you can't just tell them no, they can't vote. You can't turn them away from the poll and poll taxes and all of these things. Black people can so-called vote, right? And there was euphoria everywhere. You know, Brown versus education, they're going to integrate schools. There was euphoria in the black community. And for 6 months or so. And about a year later, they realized, hey, people ain't doing this. This is not being withheld. So they had the immediate euphoria. And then they realized that, yeah, they could put that in writing, but it wasn't going to be practiced in practical application. It wasn't happening for years and years and years. Okay, here's my point. Something happens, particularly when it comes to minorities. And there is some kind of an immediate euphoria. Euphoria. Hey, whoever, your group has rights. Yeah, oh my God, we got rights now. Yay, right? There's a euphoria. But when you understand that things are very slow to happen and then reality hits after the euphoria, it's just brief, you know? So I think, oh no, this thing's always buzzing. Sorry about this, but I have to answer. I had to answer that. It was very distracted. Where's you guys work with me? I'm looking in the chat. Somebody's going to remind me where I am, because I got ADD and I'm going to forget. Come on, chat. Come through for me, chat. Work with Garland. Do something to help him out. Yeah, you guys are friggin', come on, you guys. You're killing me. You're killing me. Somebody in the chat's supposed to be saying, this is where you are, Garland. You were just talking about X. Maybe he will get arrested. You just, when you think you got friends, they stick a knife in your back. You're saying vote for Jill Stein. God, And then we got people trying to like stick there. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody in there says, yeah, you were saying vote for Trump, yes, euphoria. There we go. Thank you. There we go. You know what? Now we have somebody in the chat who's on my side, right? At any rate, so what happens? You get your immediate euphoria. Yay. And then at some point, things go down, right? It starts high, goes down. Okay. Kamala ran in 2019. Okay. And when she did, what happened? She runs and she had pretty good numbers. And a lot of people thought, ooh, Kamala's going to be the next Obama, which if you know how I feel about Obama's policies, notwithstanding Obama, his family, his wife, his kids, his policies, that was not something that was real attractive to me, right? She's going to be the next version of a guy who literally went to Wall Street bankers and told them, I'm the only thing between you and the pitchforks. Right? And at any rate, so she comes out running. She hits the ground hard. And the concept of Kamala Harris as a politician, right? As a female of color, all this kind of crap. She's a very attractive woman. All these things, right? She's held a high positions, attorney general in California. That concept was attractive to a certain group of people in this country, right? Those who don't see politics through the lens of actual politics, right? That's beside the point. They who see it as some way to correct cultural and errors and bad things of the past. That's what we're supposed to do, right? The bamboozled, we'll call them the bamboozled people. So these people were like, yay, we've got a woman of color, woo-hoo-hoo, and her numbers look pretty good. And then Kamala started talking, and she's just not good. Here's the only way I can put it. She's not a good politician. A good politician can bullcrap you, right? A good politician can say nothing and you'll thank them for saying it. A good politician is somebody that asks a question. Obama was a damn good politician. Bill Clinton was a good politician. You know what I mean? Trump's a damn good politician, right? Why? A good politician is full of crap. I could be a good politician. I'm full of crap. I can run off at the mouth. If I had evil machinations, I could be a good politician. Look at this show. I run my mouth for like a friggin' hour or two, right? You could ask me something and I could talk for 20 minutes and never answer the question, and you'd shake my hand and thank me for answering you, right? Some people are good BSers. You know the game, right? Okay. If you're not a good BSer, you ain't a good politician. So when they ask you something, you remain confident. When somebody asks you a question that either you don't want to answer or you can't answer for strategic purposes, right? Hey, what about so-and-so? Number one, you have to look confident. I'm glad you asked that question. That's a question a lot of people have been asking me, right? You do what's called what is it? In sales, there's a term. You might have heard this: feel, felt, found, right? You can do feel, felt, found. It works like this. I know how you feel. I found a lot of people who, I've met a lot of people in my life that have felt that way. But you know what I found? Right? That's one way to get out of things. Feel, felt, found. Well, Garland, what about blah, blah, blah? And people say this, and now you scumbag, and then why? And what? That's a good question, and I know how these people feel. And I found that there's a lot of people out here that have felt that way. You know what I found? And off I go. Feel, felt, found. That's a simple way to bullcrap people. That's a simple way if you're selling something. Hey, I'd like you to buy this rock. I don't know. Why would I buy a rock? I mean, wouldn't it be stupid for me to buy a rock? I know how you feel. And over the course of my rock sales, I found a lot of people that have felt that way. But you know what we found? That if you get the right rock, the right color, if you see that rock and you feel like rock is me, that you'll put it someplace in the house, you'll walk by it every day, you'll look by that rock and you'll say, oh, that's a nice rock. And I bought it and I got a fair price for the rock. And what's important is, and you offer you good service. What if the rock breaks? It may need to be reshined. So I'm going to give you a fair, right? I ain't saying nothing. Feel, felt, found. So if a good politician can do feel, felt, found, or some other trick, there's a million of them, to say nothing and pretend like you said something. You got to be able to do that to be a good politician. Kamala can't do that. So what happened? They started off with euphoria. Yay. They didn't look into her atrocious record from a cultural perspective, right? From a justice perspective, her record as an AG was atrocious. It was not something that you would think that people who were pro-Black or pro-minority or pro-poor people would ever say, hey, let's go in that direction. No, she did terrible things. Here's a person, she didn't even have the sense back then to lie, to do felt found. When she supported keeping people in prison, and they were like, hey, we need to let these people out. She literally said, no, we need to keep them in because the state of California needs them for labor. You don't say that, even if it's true, even if you're a puppet for the system. You gotta lie and come up with something else. She didn't have sense enough to come up with a decent lie. It's not just that she did it. Of course, she's a puppet for the system. That's what the system's going to do. It's going to take advantage of people. It's going to take advantage of the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment that says people cannot be forced into unpaid labor, right? Involuntary servitude, unless they're duly convicted of a crime. The 13th Amendment still allows for slavery in the United States. And you got to find a way, if you're a puppet for the system, to excuse that. Well, these people need to finish serving. They've committed a crime and they've done horrible things, and they need to finish serving their duty to society. And that my job as the Attorney General is to ensure that these people serve. I don't come out and say, no, we need them for it's 13th Amendment. It's free prison labor. You don't come out and say that. Well, that's the kind of gross errors that she makes with her yap. And so what happens? People hear her talk. When she starts to she gets flustered, she gets angry and starts to fall apart. And when she does, the euphoria and her poll numbers start out here. And when the more they examine her record as AG, the more they listen to her in her attempts to mitigate those verbally, the more they listen to watch her give her various talks and discussions and debates, and she seems to be flustered and she gets angry easy. She seems very, to me, this is my opinion, uncomfortable with her emotions. And she seems to me that the number one emotion, the emotion that she's most comfortable with is anger. And she gets angry quick. And then she's, you know how it is when you start getting angry, you don't make good decisions. And as these things start to manifest themselves throughout the observing public, her numbers are here. Oh, she's a Black female woman of color. Let's take a look at her. Look, here's a polling. She's a Black female woman of color, and she's attractive, and she seems like she's smart, and she's got a good degree, and she's and then there up they go. And then she starts talking, and they start examining her policies. Woo-hoo. Oh, wait a minute. She was a bad, mean person as an AG, and why is she always angry? And for God's sake, what the hell was that piece of word salad, right? So what happens is this. She starts up. The concept of Kamala Harris, a Black woman, which she's of color. Would you call her Black? I really wouldn't. She's a mixed race person. The concept of a woman of color as a president is attractive to some people. But at some point, it goes from the concept to there's actually a person there, right? Just like someone that says, well, wouldn't you want a diverse pilot? Well, actually, I'd want a good pilot. The concept of a Black, strong, mixed race woman, female of color, piloting your airplane from New York to San Francisco. Doesn't that seem great? Not if we go slamming into the ground and friggin', just east of Kansas City and die in a fireball. Well, actually, no, it really doesn't. A good pilot. I think that's a good idea. If it happens to be that there's a woman, diverse, of color, strong, that's a good pilot. I'm down with that. I don't want to reject that. Oh, no. If you say, well, my, Trans World Airlines, I'm the CEO of Trans World Airlines, and we've got two pilots, and one of them is a white guy, he's 58, and one of them is a Black female of color, this and that, right? And she's the only Black female pilot that we've ever had. And she's just as good as the this guy. She's really talented, really good, and we decided we're going to give her a shot. We're going to let her fly the plane. We're going to, we're bringing her in. She's going to fly the plane, and we're trying to be reasonable here because in the past we wouldn't really hire females. So now, I think it's only fair. She's highly qualified. I'd be like, look, you had me at highly qualified. I don't care. I'm getting in this plane. Give me a good pilot. If you want to make it a black female, here's the part. Highly qualified, is that what I heard? Yeah. Stick somebody like that behind the wheel. I don't need to know anything else about them. And then I'll land safely in San Francisco. However you choose to do it, if you want to be socially conscious, or that's your airline. You can be as socially conscious as you want. Just give me the best pilot. That's all. I'm trying to get there alive. Is there anything wrong with that, right? That's where I'm coming from. So the bottom line is, because my life is on that plane. My life is, flying from New York to San Francisco on a plane, and I don't want my life to be ended because you decided to do something that didn't involve picking the best possible pilot and giving me the best possible plane. Okay. So bottom line is this. So my point is, in 2019, she comes out and she had good polling. And the more people looked at her, the worse her polls went. The more they listened to her, the worse her polls went. She was just the whole word salad thing, the whole really weird. If you watch, to me, if you watch Kamala Harris, at some point you start saying, there's something weird about her emotional response to things. What's she going to do when challenged? If she's well prepared, if she's extremely well prepared, I think she can be reasonable, sometimes good as a politician, as a debater, right? If she's very, very well prepared, she can present fine, right? If she's not well prepared, she's really bad. And that's when you get the word salads, when she's not really prepared, when she's off the cuff. And she starts doing this with her hands, doing one of these, and she starts, saying the same thing over and over. She'll do, that's something she'll do, you'll be like, you've probably heard some of the things. What does she say? Unhindered by the past or something like that. Whatever, people have heard that, right? A lot of people have probably heard that, right? And basically she starts with saying whatever the title or concept she's talking about, and she'll repeat that over and over and over and over. Like she looks like she's looking for words. She looks like she's looking for something to say. And then ultimately she sounds like a person who's trying to sound smart. And there's nothing makes you look stupider than trying to sound smart. Just say what you're thinking. Just be comfortable in your own skin and say what you believe. And if people don't like it, if they think you're an idiot, maybe you are. That's all right too. It's all right to be an idiot sometimes. There are things that people ask me about at times, and I don't really know that much about it. And I may talk about it, but I realize and recognize I don't know that much about it. I do the best I can. I may sound like a fool, a complete blithering idiot. And you know what? In some instances, I am a blithering idiot. I'm a human being, right? If you listen to me talk about some subjects, you'll say, that Garland's a genius. How does he know so much? And if you listen to me talk about other subjects, you'll say, for God's sake, that guy's a flipping idiot. What's he talking about? That is the nature and the duality of mankind, right? In some instances, we can be really good human beings, and others we can be bad. Sometimes we sound really smart. Sometimes we sound really stupid. You got to be comfortable in your own skin and be okay with either one. Kamala, I don't think she's comfortable. I don't think she's confident. I'm guessing now, but for whatever reason, she doesn't speak well. She doesn't present well in public. And I suspect that her numbers are starting up. Basically, about the, I think that there's still a question as to whether or not she'll be the nominee. I think Obama doesn't want her to be the nominee. I'm told by people, Obama don't really like her. that this is part of, people who know the inside of politics know that in the Democratic Party, the two big machines are the Clinton machine and the Obama machine. There are some connections as to their donors, but those are the two big machines, Clinton and Obama machine, and that they don't like each other, that the Clintons and the Obamas really don't like each other, and that she's the Clinton choice and Obama wants somebody different. That's not the direction at all that he wants to go. That's what I'm told. I do know this. Let me find this. Let me find something for you. Let me show you an article that gives you an implication. Come on, this thing's moving so slow. Okay. Let's look at this. Obama declines to endorse Kamala Harris to succeed Biden, predicts outstanding nominee will emerge. I want you to think about that, right? There's Obama skinning and grinning with Joe, blah, blah, blah. Barack Obama steered clear of endorsing Harris on Sunday, instead alluding to the possibility of an open primary, right? I don't know how hard it is for you to read the tea leaves, but it looks pretty obvious to me. What he's saying is we need an open primary. We need somebody else. Why? For all of his imperial puppetry, Obama is a product of Wall Street. He eats, drinks, and sleeps for Wall Street. People that understand him understand Wall Street. He really represents Wall Street, as if there's a politician that does it. But first and foremost, okay. But I will say this, and give the devil his due, as they say. No fan of Obama, but he's a smart politician. Obama's a smart guy. Obama's nobody's fool, which makes him, for a lefty like me, makes him the most dangerous, right? The most dangerous of your adversary. A lefty. I mean, I'm opposed to war. Of course, politically, Obama's one of my adversaries, right? But you have to understand your adversaries and know their strengths and weaknesses. And as far as I'm concerned, Obama's a very smart politician. Very, very smart. He understands the system. And most importantly, he understands how to get elected. He understands how to connect with people. He understands the importance of connecting with people emotionally, of using the right rhetoric, of projecting the right image. He understands that stuff, and he's good at it. Okay. He knows what I know. Kamala Harris ain't good at any of it. She's terrible at it. And right now, I think Barack Obama realizes that if Kamala Harris comes out, all of these people are going to be, yay, oh boy. Here's where they don't get any gain from it. All of these Black women are going to bite the hook. Yay, the first Black woman, blah, 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 blah. We've got to support her. Here's the problem. They're already voting for Biden. The segment that is the most ardent supporters of the Democrats, the ones that will absolutely vote for Biden, that will crawl through 10 miles of broken glass and razor blades on their hands and knees to get to the polls to vote for women, to vote for Biden, are Black women. So the group of people who will already show up are going to be the most enthused. That doesn't give you anything. All you got is the people that were already going to vote for you, that they're going to vote for you. Well, that you didn't get anything. What you want is, what did Obama give them? A bunch of young people who never show up. Obama won. He brought in a new demographic. All of these young people of all various races, right? All of these young people who never show up, Obama brought them in, and he won. He's a smart politician. He's a good politician. I mean, notwithstanding his ideological inclinations, which I don't agree with, he's a smart and good politician. Give the devil his due. And he brought in a new demographic. It would have done him no good to bring in Black women. They already had Black women. They needed to bring somebody. It's like it would be like a Democrat choosing the vice president from New York or Maryland or Massachusetts. Why? Because they already got that state. It brings them nothing. It doesn't bring in a demographic state. If you're a Democrat, you would be more likely, if it was a close race, to choose somebody from Ohio, maybe Florida, a VP that's popular in their own state, in a state that's hard for you to win, so the VP can bring in a state, so they can bring in a new demographic. The people in this particular state that you weren't going to get before, right? So it would do you no good to bring in somebody from Massachusetts. Massachusetts is in the bag. It's done. You're running for president as a Democrat, right? She's from California. Of what, you know, so you've already got California. And she's going to appeal mostly to Black women. You already got Black women. What does she bring in new? She doesn't bring in anything new. But that's okay. If they felt that she's really, really good and she'll win, then they should run her, because it doesn't matter. You shouldn't prohibit. You shouldn't say, we're not going to run you because you're a Black woman or you're from California or whatever, because you could be hurting yourself if that's the best candidate that you think could win. They're doing it the other way around. They're bringing a candidate who has very poor political inclinations and has a record. This is what you don't want. This is what you don't want in politics. You have to look, if you're going to run somebody, a candidate, you got to look at their history. You got to do some research. If somebody comes to me and says, so Joe Blow is running, how do you think they're going to do? You know, as an analyst, as a political analyst, you know, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to look into have they run before. Yeah, they ran for Senate in 1999. They ran for this in 2012. And I'm going to look at the polling numbers and say, when they started off running, what were their polling numbers? It's 6%. What they end up at? 38%. That tells me that if this person, even though they lost then, it tells me they started off low with low name recognition. And as people got to see him and hear him, more people joined him. I would say that person has a chance at winning. Now, that person has a chance at winning. I look at 2 times they ran, and both times this person ran, their polling numbers started low and their polling numbers increased. What do we learn from that? We learned that that particular politician, that whenever they run, that their polling numbers increase from wherever they are. So I'd say, put your money on that person. They got a chance. That's somebody you can start with, because what that tells you is when people see them and hear them, they tend to like them. More people like them. People come on board. Now, let's do it the other way. I look at a politician. Tell me about that politician. Well, the politician ran for president in 2020. Okay. And what happened? They started off with pretty good poll numbers. And what happened? Their poll numbers cratered. The more people saw them and heard from them, the worse they did. I'd say don't put your money behind that person at all, because look, history is important. We view things all over the world. Wise people, people who try to have some level of accuracy, view things through a historical context. And I don't mean an ahistorical context. I mean a historical context, right? So if I look at the history of Kamala Harris and I say, what big office did she run for? President, how'd she do? You know, she started off, pretty good. She ended up pretty bad. Now, she ran for Senate. Well, she ran for Senate in the bluest of blue states. You know, and so she ran, she ran for, so not Senate, I guess it was House, whatever it was. She ran, but bottom line is, she was an AG. I don't look at her, I don't evaluate her history from the perspective of how she did in the bluest of blue states. I evaluate her history and how she did, in more of a national environment. In a state, I don't know if you know this, in a state, I found this a while back, the most powerful politician in a state is the senior senator, right? Whoever the senior senator is in a given state is the most powerful politician. The state machine is run unofficially, informally chaired by the senior senator. So if the senior senator in California said, Kamala Harris is going to be the AG or whatever, she's going to get this position, the whole machine will get behind her and shove her into that position. So you can't look at state politics through the same lens as federal politics. It's a lot harder to do that on a federal level. So, but those are all the historical context that we need to look at. But the bottom line is we have a specific example of the office that she's running for now. Notwithstanding anything else she's done, she has run for this office before. And her numbers started off pretty decent and they cratered. My guess is her numbers will start off pretty good and they'll crater. And a big part of it is this. Let me add this. She'll be coming into town wearing the policies of Joe Biden. That they've been able to hide her pretty well. And one of the things that's going to happen is she's going to be pressed about her positions on Israel, which ain't going to work out real good for her. She'll be pressed on her about her positions on, various potential conflicts around the world, and various other things. And we'll see what happens when she gets flustered. We'll see what happens when they ask questions that she needs to be able to dance around a little bit. Questions that she needs to be able to filibuster. I mean, as a politician, we may not like it, though. That's the game, right? So we'll see her political skills on display. What happens when they ask her a question that she really can't answer it, or her answer would be unpopular? How does she massage her answer in a way that it doesn't freak people out, right? I don't think that's going to work out well for her. And the policies of Biden are not popular at all. Before Trump got shot, let's be honest, he was winning. I mean, let's not pretend like Trump came from behind, that when the assassination attempt was made on Donald Trump, that he was in the doldrums, that he was in last place, and suddenly, because people felt sorry for him, he bolted in the first place. Trump was winning. He was predicted to win. He was winning in every battleground state, because they were like, hey, Donald Trump is only up by 2 on national polls. National polls are of no value at all. You got to win the states. But everybody knows in politics, forget the national poll. You got to win the states. He was ahead in every single battleground state, which means Joe Biden loses. Joe Biden had no chance at that time. So Donald Trump was already winning before the incident happened, where there was an assassination attempt. Might not be the last, but the assassination attempt happened, and I believe that only increased his chances of winning. And now Kamala Harris has come in, and I think that increases his chance of winning. One of the factors that has to be taken into account, and this is known by political analysts, right? Most political analysts have read a book. It used to be called The 13 Keys to the White House by Professor Alan Lichtman. Now it's called The Keys to the White House. And it's things that are used to predict who will win from the election. And the way he puts it is the incumbent party or the challenging or opposing party, right? One of the advantages of an incumbent party is in and of itself incumbency. That's one of the numbers. That's one of the keys that's checked off, right? The fact that Joe Biden is not stepping down, Joe Biden, even if he ran, would still have one advantage, and that is the advantage of incumbency. Do I think it would save him? No. But as far as from the perspective of evaluating who's going to win, that is an advantage for the incumbent party incumbency. Now, Kamala Harris, putting her in as the nominee, or whoever it is the nominee, automatically negates that one advantage that the Democrats have. Now, I'm not saying that's enough to save them, but that's one of the few advantages that they have. And using anybody other than Joe Biden, they lose that advantage of incumbency. Now, that's not to say they should have went with Joe Biden by any stretch of the imagination. It was clearly obvious that Joe Biden's cognitive decline. So he discredited and delegitimized the ruling elite. People looked at him, and the ruling elite that support him are discredited and delegitimized. We have what some have called a crisis of legitimacy, the ruling elite's right to rule, right? Joe Biden's competency and the fact that the ruling elite hid that for so long compromises their legitimacy as legitimate and competent rulers. So that is not, so that what I'm saying is that the issue of incumbency most likely would not overcome this crisis of legitimacy, which is, might I add, it's not brought about by Joe Biden's cognitive decline, but I think it is exaggerated by Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Because people were already like, man, what are these people doing that are running this country? They're mad. They're screwing everything up. And then Joe Biden's cognitive decline, they looked at it and they said, and not only that, whoever's the president, it's a fraud. He ain't really the president. That guy ain't running things, right? So it magnified the crisis of legitimacy that the ruling elite was already suffering. So I guess you could weigh that against losing or gaining the advantage of incumbency, and I guess they did, and they decided he's got to go. Whatever the matter, whatever the case, she's not going to have the advantage of incumbency. But she's going to still have to eat all of Joe Biden's policies. So she gets the worst of things without the best. She loses the crisis of incumbency, but she was part of the Biden administration. So everything that went bad in the Biden administration is still going to be put on her back. And she's not a good politician. She's not going to be able to do well in struggling with a very difficult environment. You're taking a person who's not a good politician and putting them in a very difficult environment. You're putting her in a horse race. You're putting her in a game where she's down by 3 touchdowns with 8 minutes left in the game. She's down by 21 points in a football game, in an American football game. And there ain't but 7 minutes left. How do you win that one? So you're taking a person who's already not very good, and you're putting in a position that somebody who was really good might not be able to overcome, because the circumstances are dire for the Democratic Party. So there we go. And I think what will happen, here's my final prediction. I think what we'll see is that Kamala Harris's incompetency will further humiliate and expose the ruling elite. It will exacerbate the crisis of legitimacy for the ruling elite, because at some point, if they run her, people in the Democratic Party will look at the ruling elite and say, who the hell's idea was this? At some point, she's going to do some really things that are quite unattractive to the voters. She's going to do some things that the voters are going to think of back of Joe Biden's cognitive decline. It's her too? What the hell is this catching here? Is it contagious? Is cognitive decline contagious? How'd it go from him to her? She ain't even 60 years old, for God's sake. What is she doing with cognitive decline? That's going to happen. And then they will look at the ruling elite and say, what are you people doing? You have no idea what you're doing, right? That's what I think happens. It exacerbates rather than mitigates the crisis that the ruling elite find themselves in supporting a guy with dementia. I think it exacerbates that. And ultimately, we got a new puppet that's just as incompetent and embarrassing as the old puppet. Because
All right, now game on. Is it going to be Kamala Harris, or is it going to be someone else for the presidential ticket of the Democratic Party? Joe Biden obviously dropped out earlier this morning. To all of you who worked on making that happen, thank you on behalf of the Democratic Party and America. Thank you for doing that. And I'm thrilled that we won. I'll give one more shout out to Joe Biden. He did at the end do what Donald Trump couldn't do, let go of power. And we appreciate that. And I get it. There was pressure, but there was enormous pressure on Donald Trump. And he lost the election, which is way, way worse. And he still wouldn't let go of power. So thank you to President Biden for doing the right thing today. Okay, now, super important. People have started to line up for Kamala Harris and against Kamala Harris. And against Kamala Harris doesn't mean that they don't like her, and it definitely can't be her. They're arguing, as I am, for an open convention. And so it is dramatic who's on which side. And there's a number of people who've already endorsed Kamala Harris and taken themselves out of the running. Kamala Harris has done something actually really smart. And I want to tell you about that. And that's really interesting. We'll get to that in a little bit as well. And then you know that I'm for the open convention, but it's very curious. Again, very strange bedfellows as to who's on my side. You might be surprised by that. And who's on the other side. Lots of surprises here. So first of all, Fernando Cabadas, thank you for joining, brother. Young Turks members make this possible. So please hit the join button below. And make sure you're watching the show live Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock Eastern. I was going to go on vacation. I canceled the trip. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's go. This is the most exciting time in politics in a long, long time. And for the Democratic Party, we went from massive underdogs, even Biden's own team saying near zero chance of winning. Today, by the way, interestingly, Rachel Maddow and other MSNBC hosts all of a sudden admitting, yeah, there was a 0 chance that Biden could win. I didn't remember hearing that on MSNBC yesterday, and definitely not a month ago, and definitely not for the last year. But all of a sudden, the minute he drops out, we have honesty about how he couldn't win. So now, so I'll be on the show on Monday throughout the whole week. I'm even going to do Wednesdays, which I normally take off for business reasons, but I'm on all week. So make sure you're checking it out. The live show is amazing, and there's 1,000 developments we'll tell you about Monday at 6 o'clock. Thomas O'Neill, KM, thank you guys, and for the super chats. And I'm going to get to RFK Jr. because he's going to be relevant here. And there's already someone considering challenging Kamala Harris very seriously. CNN's got that report. I'll tell you about that. So let's get started. So first, let's start with the people who are already on Kamala Harris's side and who have endorsed her. So number one, Joe Biden. But even he did not put it in his original announcement. He had to put it in sometime later. Oh, yeah, by the way, I guess, Kamala Harris. To be fair, he didn't say I guess. He was clear about it. But the fact that he didn't have it in his first announcement might be telling. I thought it was telling when he left it out, but he did add it in about an hour or so, okay? George, thank you for being a member. Appreciate it. I love Young Turks members. You guys make everything possible, including honest news reporting. Okay, Bill and Hillary Clinton have endorsed Kamala Harris. I didn't take that as a given, especially when you find out the people who have not endorsed her, okay? And especially because there is no end to Hillary Clinton's ambition. Maybe she thought, hey, you know what? I'm not going to be able to get this. That's too fanciful, and that's true. Maybe she's angling for VP. Don't think that's impossible. The Clintons never go away. But for now, solidly in Kamala Harris's camp, so that's settled. Then there's a couple of small people that are not as important. No disrespect. They're just not in the mix of relevant factions of the Democratic Party. So Senator Tammy Baldwin, she's important because she's Wisconsin, but she's not clearly in any camp, and it doesn't move the needle in either direction. She wasn't a big contender. Elizabeth Warren in the kind of progressive camp, largely progressive camp. And so, and we'll take her. Those are old, long conversations. But bottom line, certainly on the left of the Democratic politics and very, very left of the Senate. And she's endorsed Kamala Harris. I've seen a number of progressives do that. Maybe we're going to try to set up a debate on Monday between somebody who's for open convention and somebody for Kamala Harris. I don't understand the logic of progressives supporting Kamala Harris and saying, I don't want an open convention. I just want her to be anointed. It makes no sense to me at all. And I'm hearing, but I don't see it on the official list, that AOC is also saying definitely Kamala Harris. We'll check on that. We'll have the results for sure. Anything that's finalized for sure on Monday. But it's a curious position that I think is indefensible. Yeah, Gary Krell, Kathy Willis, you guys are all American heroes. Thank you for hitting that beautiful join button below. Again, it makes all the difference. Look at how honest we were. Look at how we were able to tell you the truth and be right about this. And that's only because we're powered by you guys and not by incredibly wealthy, powerful advertisers, corporations, or politicians. So now, here we go. Who else is on Kamala Harris's side already endorsed? Jared Moskowitz. Interesting. Kind of a corporate Democrat, mainly known for being super pro-Israel. He's known for other things too. He wears sneakers and makes, snide comments about Donald Trump. I don't care about the sneakers. I like the snide comments. I'm not in favor. The Israel thing's not relevant yet, so it's just kind of a rando. Maxwell Frost, young progressive. Here we go again. Why are progressives saying, I don't want any competition? We shouldn't have any real contest. We should just pick ahead of time Kamala Harris, whether she's the strongest or not. I see no logic in it. Here we go. More. What is this? Why are progressives turned into like the biggest offenders of the establishment? Katie Porter, love her. But why are you endorsing Kamala Harris? But she is. And by the way, look, maybe I know something, or maybe they know something I don't know. So, I'm telling you this, you make up your own mind. Martin Luther King III, you failed to see the relevance. So Martin Luther King, enormously relevant. His son. Okay, I'll ask my son what he thinks. I don't know. Okay, God bless him. I'm sure he's done some decent work on his part. I guess they're putting that on the list because that is an African-American leader saying that Kamala Harris should definitely be the nominee. But the people who are saying, oh, you got to pick her, she's a black woman, they have a giant problem, which I'm going to tell you about in a second. Adam Schiff has come out and said Kamala Harris, but it's pretty easy for Adam Schiff. He's already running for Senate in California. He's part of the California delegation, which Kamala Harris is. Okay, but hey, that's a member of the establishment that wanted Biden to go. He's a relevant player. He's saying Kamala Harris. Gabby Giffords, that's Mark Kelly's wife. Mark Kelly's the current senator from Arizona. Gabby Giffords, of course, was a congresswoman from Arizona who was shot in the head. And so I appreciate her, but the fact that she is Mark Kelly's wife is going to be relevant because of the smart move that Kamala Harris made. We'll get to that in a minute. Ted Lieu, another progressive. Kamala Harris. I don't get it, man. What has Kamala Harris done that's got progressives so excited? Look, I don't think a progressive can win with these very conservative delegates that Biden has, but I don't know why progressives have to rush out of the gate to endorse someone who's not on our side really at all. It's like one of the advantages Kamala Harris has, and it's a complicated one because she's also held bankers accountable in the past, but these days the bankers really like her, and so she's like the donor. Huge percentage of the donor class is on her side. Some donors are not sure she's the best candidate, but in terms of banks' interest, they kind of like Kamala Harris. So I'm just missing why Elizabeth Warren and these progressives, and I'm happy to have them come on and tell us to think it's got to be Kamala Harris. It definitely doesn't, but okay, so that's their opinion. And the last one, and the most relevant and important one, Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania. He could have challenged her, but he's already endorsed her. So now that gets us to the smart move by Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris, and oh my God, and I got to get to, all right, I'm going to tell you smart move by Kamala Harris, and I'm going to tell you why the force is against her in a minute. But first, the smart move, then I'll tell you the trends, okay? So Kamala Harris immediately said that there was 4 people on her VP list. Now, why is that so smart? Because you name some of the top 4 Democrats who could have challenged you and get them back on their heels going, whoa, I might be vice president. Well, hold on. That's the better play. It's a risky play to go up against Kamala Harris. Some in mainstream media are now saying it would be political suicide to do it. Of course, they say that. That's not remotely true. That's CBS, and an anchor on CBS saying that. We'll come back to that too. Blake Cavity, thank you for being a member, and Bashir Duckworth, that's an interesting ticket. There's 1,000 interesting tickets. We'll come back to that too. So she named 4 people, and they were Josh Shapiro, and that's why you see him on the list of people who endorsed her immediately. Basically, that's him going, I got a 25% chance of being VP, at least a VP nominee. That's kind of a no-brainer. Okay, a lot less risk and big upside, and 25% chance is not bad at all. So Shapiro's like, okay, I'll do it. I endorse Kamala. So there goes the main competitor out. Nice job. Whether it's Kamala Harris or her team, good thinking. And by the way, I like good thinking like that. That helps me get more comfortable with Kamala Harris, showing that she can do strategy. She can show that she can win. So I'm not hating on it at all. I like anyone who can prove that they can beat Donald Trump, and there's a good first step if you ask me for Kamala Harris. Next person on the list, Mark Kelly. That's why his wife was like, I endorse Kamala Harris. So he's the senator from Arizona. So she's going with relevant swing states as potential. Third guy on the list, not in a swing state, but very interesting, and I mentioned him a lot, Governor Andy Beshear from Kentucky. Has won in Kentucky twice as a Democratic governor. That's amazing. So he would be good on the ticket, and he would have been one of her top competitors. He has not endorsed her yet, so that hasn't worked on him yet, but it might. So smart of her to put him on the list. There's one other person. Fiercely Independent is asking, are we planning to go to the DNC? Well, and could I get the nomination? Okay. I'll answer that. I'll go to the 4th person, etc. So am I planning to get the nomination? No, hell no. Look, guys, I love you for asking, and I love you for considering it, but it's not remotely possible. The Biden delegates are going to not pick a progressive, and they definitely are not going to pick an online talk show host, and they're definitely not going to pick a person who was not born here. I would have had to win the case for me to have any shot at this late date. And I did. And long story short, we did not win the first case in South Carolina. So that's not at all possible. But I'm glad that you asked, because there's so many people who are only in it for themselves that people naturally assume, like, if you say it should be an open convention, are you angling to be the pick? No. They're not going to pick Bernie Sanders. They're not going to pick any progressive, let alone me. I'm the last person they'd pick. So absolutely not. And look, I'd love to get Jamie Raskin on the ticket. He's a fair middle ground between progressives and the establishment. He's super smart. He's already been great in arguing the case against Donald Trump. I think he's kind of a perfect VP pick, but that's the best you can have, is progressive adjacent in Congress. So no other progressive, I think, would have any kind of chance. I wish they did, obviously, but I don't think they do. So who's the fourth person that she's considering? Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina. And that makes sense too, because that's another person who could have challenged her, another swing state potentially in North Carolina, and a guy who's won in North Carolina as a Democrat. So those are all good choices that she has for VP, and it's smart of her to make the right play to try to eliminate them as competitors. Jordan Wichard, thank you for joining, and especially at the producer level. Guys, the higher levels, they help so much, you have no idea. So thank you so much for doing that. You could also upgrade through the join button. Ryan Ford asked about Michelle Obama. Hold, we're going to get to the Obamas. That's one of the most interesting parts of this. Thank you, RTP Renewed, for the contribution on Super Chat. All right, now I want to go to Polymarket. They're a prediction market. I think they're super interesting. They happen to be one of our sponsors too, but I go to it anyway because I'm so curious about how the numbers are moving. So I want to tell you about a couple of those before I come back to the people against Kamala Harris, because this stuff is, and I have strong thoughts on it. First of all, Kamala Harris obviously has taken the lead in terms of the Democrats that could win the presidency, but this is definitely wrong in my opinion. Okay. So Donald Trump has 64% chance of winning now, according to Polymarket. You can get it at polymarket.com. Look, see all these. And this is a prediction market, so people are putting their money where their mouth is. Kamala Harris is at only 31%. Michelle Obama is at 3%. Any other Democratic politicians at 2%. I mean, for the Democrat to only be at 31%, I mean, she's the most likely to win the nomination. No, it's not 31%. It's definitely higher. No. Trump at 64% is definitely lower. This is my opinions. Take it for what it's worth. Other Democratic politician at 2% is a steal, because somebody can get that nomination and they could easily beat Trump. That's the that's the play I do, but hey, that's just me. Okay. Democratic nominee for 2024. At this point, Kamala Harris, according to the prediction markets, is at 83%. So they think it's almost definitely going to be her. I don't know about that. I would again take other here. Others at 8%, and other is 1,000 people, because then they have Michelle Obama. Unlikely. They have her at 6%. Hillary Clinton, Gavin Newsom, RFK Jr. It's none of these people. Elizabeth Warren, Dean Phillips, Joe Biden. No, none of those people. So I would go other. That's a bargain at 8. But it's giving you a sense of the how this race is shaping up. Now Democratic VP nominee Roy Cooper and Shapiro, because they've been named by the Kamala Harris team, are now both sitting at 27%. Both Democratic governors that are interesting picks for different reasons that I explained earlier. Mark Kelly and Andy Beshear are the other two that were mentioned. So they're at 15. Kelly's at 15. Beshear is at 13. Buttigieg, who's all over TV. Don't count out Buttigieg. I wish we could count out Buttigieg. We can't. I think he'd be a terrible pick, but he's sitting at 7%. So as I look down the list at potential VPs, Pritzker is interesting at 1% because he's got $1 billion burning a hole in his pocket, and he was a pretty successful governor of Illinois. Illinois is not that relevant a state for the purpose of the election, but the fact that he's a successful governor with a lot of money could be relevant. Wes Moore is interesting for the VP. He's under 1. Warnock, less likely, but not impossible. So God, that Polymarket market is so interesting to me. So check that out when you get a chance. But the bottom line takeaway we get from it is the markets think overwhelmingly likely that Kamala Harris is going to be the Democratic nominee at 83% likely. So, and the markets are the best we have now because we don't even have polling on it yet because it just happened today. So now, so all the people who use Super Chat, thank you, brothers and sisters. Sorry I can't get to all of them, but I'll try. And you know that when we're live during our social breaks, when we go to commercials for everyone else, for Roku and YouTube TV and Samsung and all those folks, I do the social breaks where I read your comments. You guys are part of the show, especially the members. I read the member comments more. So we'll do a lot of that on Monday. You know, every weekday, Monday through Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern. Don't miss the show. Kevin Soak, thank you for the super chat. And good point. She needs to develop a strong vision for the country. If Kamala Harris wants our vote, she should earn it by, at the very minimum, telling us what has she got? What's her plan for the future? And by the way, if I was Kamala Harris, knowing that this was a possibility for at least 3 weeks, right, I would have the most kick-ass speech ready about my agenda for the next 4 years right now. And I'd deliver it tomorrow on Monday, give Biden a day for, oh, thank you, we appreciate your service, etc. Then Monday, I do a fire burner going, this is what I want. This is what's right for America. This is what I'm going to do for the average American. This is why I should be the Democratic nominee. Let's see if she's got that in her. But her first move, like I said, was a good one, naming the 4 competitors as potential VP picks. So who's against her? Super relevant. Now, number one, most important by a lot, but the others are also huge. Barack Obama. Now, he's not against her, but he put out a lengthy statement, and I read it to you in the last video that I did. He did not endorse her, and in fact, he endorsed a, quote, a process by which we pick the best nominee. Boom, perfect. That means he's on our side. Open convention. By the way, tyt.com/open convention. We'll have the link down below. Sign it. Let's pick the strongest candidate against Trump. Guys, it's so exciting now. Now we went from the dullest possible race, Biden and Trump again, the Rambler versus the Mumbler. It was a terrible race. To holy cow, this is the most exciting race we've been involved in. Let's not go back to anointing. By the way, second point against anointing, and then I'll get to the rest of the Democrats. If you anoint Kamala Harris as the nominee without any kind of process, well, then she's going to anoint the VP. So we have a double anointment. And how has anointments worked out for us so far? Terribly. Democratic leadership never anoints the right person. So now, get a load of these folks who have not come out and endorsed Kamala Harris yet. Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer. The fact that they have not endorsed her are, under normal circumstances, would be shocking. So those are top establishment Democratic leaders. And they are very notably sitting on the sidelines and not saying Kamala Harris. And by the way, it is very hard for Kamala Harris advocates, and I know I've already debated some on TV, for them to go to their, their number one tactic. And Misha Cross did it on Chris Cuomo's show on News Nation on Friday when I was up against her. It has to be a black woman. If it's not a black woman, you're basically insulting all black people and insulting all women. Well, why would picking Gretchen Whitmer be insulting all women? Why would picking Wes Moore be insulting all black people? It doesn't make any sense. But on top of that, a little hard to call people asking for an open convention racist when Barack Obama's on our side. So we'll see if they stand there, because remember, they're all going to put their finger to the wind and they're all going to make their best judgment call. So they might be waiting, and they could easily on Monday or Tuesday have the dominoes fall. If she's gathering momentum, then they add to the momentum by endorsing her one by one. That is entirely possible. So don't get too excited that there's definitely going to be a clash, or there's definitely going to be an open convention. But the fact that they haven't done it so far is terrific news. And right now, Kamala Harris has got to be pulling out all of her hairs that Barack Obama has not endorsed her. So that's a giant development. And Nancy Pelosi hasn't. And Nancy Pelosi has indicated she's in favor of a mini primary. So ball game. I can't tell you how exciting this is. So we've got forces against Kamala Harris, or at least for an open convention. We've got forces for Kamala Harris, and the clash begins. So we might have a debate about it at 8 o'clock on Monday. That's what we're trying to put together. We're trying to find a pro-Kamala person, pro-open convention person, and have that conversation. We try to have all these important conversations.
Allegedly, Biden's staffers, meaning people working within the Biden White House, and members of the mainstream corporate press feel betrayed and misled about Biden's mental decline. But they're all full of crap, if you ask me. And I have receipts to prove it. Stick around for those receipts. You're going to want to see them. Now, they've, in my opinion, known for a long time that Biden has had some issues. And I think they're part of this cover up. And I think that they should not in any way have their reputations laundered by what's happening right now, what they're saying in the press today. So one of the reporters who's actually done a great job on reporting on Biden's mental decline is Alex Thompson over at Axios. And Axios overall has done a good job covering this. Now, they write that lawmakers and top Democrats feel duped by Biden. His press office, his campaign co-chairman, Jeffrey Katzenberg, his top aides, they all promised the president was sharper than ever. Some of Biden's own staff is replaying in their heads the past few years, wondering if Biden's decline was purposely hidden. These staffers wondered why people in roles that typically brought access were kept away. They assumed Biden was a proud private man, more comfortable with his family. Post-debate, some feel this was a big orchestrated effort to conceal the episodic moments of concern. In hindsight, they say it's clear Biden needed help recalling people or events and getting sufficient rest to handle big moments. These clowns knew all along. They knew all along because issues involving Biden's mental decline, not new. And didn't just come up for the first time during this election cycle. They knew as far back as 2019, 2020. And here's our coverage of it back then. Bernie Sanders was asked to comment on what everyone's been talking about, which is his political opponent's mental decline. And as always, Bernie Sanders took the high road. Take a look.
Some of Joe Biden's answers don't make sense. Do you think it's acceptable for a presidential candidate to respond to questions like Joe Biden does?
This isn't a personal attack, but it gets to Nina's question. And the question of Joe Biden's mental acuity is not something that just comes up. Senator, your thoughts?
I'm not going to go at that level in attacking. For Joe and I have, that's for people to decide.
I agree with Brett Baer in that this isn't just, it's not a personal attack.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing. Tomorrow's Superstar Tuesday.
All right, Chuck. Thank you very much. All right, it's Chris. But anyway,
I love this place. Look, what's not to like about Vermont? You had people like Margaret Thatcher. Excuse me. You had people like the former chairman and leader of the party in Germany.
This day, 30 years ago, Nelson Mandela walked out of prison and entered into discussions about apartheid. I had the great honor of meeting him. I had the great honor of being arrested with our UN ambassador on the streets of Soweto. The only African-American woman that ever been elected to the United States Senate. A whole range of people.
No,
my point is
true. The other one is true. Really, they didn't know? I remember when those questions were raised back in 2020, in 2019. Oh, there was an orchestrated effort to shut those concerns down and smear anyone who asked those legitimate questions. And it worked, it worked. So now those same people are gonna turn around and be like, oh, I am so aggrieved. I am so aggrieved. I feel lied to and betrayed. Get out of here. You guys knew and you were part of the cover up. So please spare me the nonsense. Many of them engaged in the smear tactics against anyone who dared to ask questions. I have more evidence for you. I'm not done with the receipts, but before we get to that, Cenk, thanks for watching. Our audience has helped build TYT into the media giant it is today. Together, we can accomplish anything. Support our work and join us at tyt.com/team.
So look, Axios can often be a very establishment too, but in this case, Jim Vandehei and Mike Allen are being accurate here, and they have pointed out some real reporting from Axios about his age. But one of the things that they said really struck me as a bigger factor than people realize, which is they say, look, when we question Biden's age and his mental fitness, we would get huge pushback from the White House. So that's factor number one. And so let's note for the record then that most journalists, when pressured by the powerful, backed down and told a story that the powerful wanted that was untrue. That's for the great majority of our national media. And that's why they're so upset, because they look like idiots and cowards now because
they are.
Because they were cowards. But the second part is even more interesting. They explain, well, whenever we did anything like this, there would be tons of people on Twitter who would yell at us, who were like social media guys, Democratic consultants, Democratic operatives, but mainly it's people that the mainstream media has trained to be blue MAGA.
You ready for more receipts?
Yes.
You ready? Because I'm ready. Let's go to graphic 4 here. This is a headline from The Hill, August 15th, 2019. Biden allies float scaling back events to limit gaffes, okay? Here is an excerpt from the piece. Allies to Joe Biden have been floating the idea of altering the former vice president's schedule in an effort to reduce the gaffes he has made in recent days. The allies, growing increasingly nervous about Biden's verbal flubs, have said it's an approach that's been suggested to campaign officials on the heels of the former vice president's stumbles. Like, this was all playing out in the open, okay, back in 2019. There's more. Biden has a tendency to make the blunders late in the day. This is 2019, his allies say, particularly after a long swing on the road like he had last week in Iowa. They say something needs to be done to give the candidate more downtime as the campaign intensifies in the fall.
So they've known for 5 years.
They've known. I know that they've known. We've all known that they've known, because again, these issues came up in the Democratic primary back in 2019, 2020, okay? And then you made a point about reporters having difficulty in just simply reporting the truth on this. A lot of them will deal with the Biden camp basically going after them and being incredibly difficult. Well, one of the good reporters on this issue is Alex Thompson. And so he was asked about the difficulties he's had in reporting this story. I wanna go to that video next. I believe this is D3. Let's watch.
I mean, it's not been fun. I mean, no one likes to get in a fight with the White House. And, at times I felt a little bit out there on a limb, even though I felt very confident in the reporting. I think it's just natural. You look around and see, well, other people aren't writing it as much as well. And, part of that is because the White House comms team, I think, has been very effective at being able to push back on these stories by inserting sort of, well, Trump did, crazy things with his schedule too, and watch TV all the time, didn't seem as energetic. This president, this White House has limited press access to the president more than any president in several decades. I'll give you just like a few examples here. This president has never done a sit down with the New York Times, with the Washington Post, with the Wall Street Journal, even with Reuters, let alone places like Axios or Politico. He very rarely does sustain sit-down interviews. That has changed just a little bit in the last month or two. You saw him sit down with ABC. Yep. You saw him sit down with Time Magazine. But those are the exceptions to the rule.
So obviously the Biden White House cuts off access to reporters, and it's very intentionally done, clearly intentionally done, to shield the public from knowing the truth about his mental decline. But to Thompson's credit, he stayed on the story, dealt with the smears, but continued reporting the truth. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for reporters who are willing to do that. Go ahead, Cenk.
I have a definitive fact that's going to settle this matter in a second. First, I want to tell you that very likely tomorrow on the show, Brian Stelter will come on, former host of Reliable Sources on CNN, and we're going to debate this issue because he thinks that the media is being treated unfairly. Okay, so well, hold, let's let him make his case, and we'll discuss that tomorrow every day, Monday through Friday. Show starts at 6 o'clock Eastern, goes till 8 o'clock Eastern. Make sure you're checking it out. Amazing things happen every day on the show. Now, give you some facts here. Reporters, the same reporters who criticize Donald Trump would say he's not doing nearly enough press conferences. he did 3 times as many press conferences as Joe Biden. So the reporters that were yelling at Trump that he's not doing enough, where were you on Joe Biden? Every once in a while we get a little bit of complaint, but would there be a uprising like, why is he hiding? He only did 1/3 of the press conferences of Donald Trump, who spent most of his presidency playing golf and watching Fox News. So way worse on that account. He did 1/5 of the press conferences that Barack Obama did. He's been hiding the whole time, but now the killer fact. He did not do the Super Bowl interview. And the Super Bowl interview is where a lot of us, again, Nate Silver, Ezra Klein, myself, all at that point realized it's over. And that's why they did what they did in speaking out and I did what I did. Because it's a softball interview that reaches a huge percentage of the country, including a lot of people who are not political. It is the perfect interview for someone running for president. And he turned it down. The only reason you turn that down is because you are not mentally capable of even doing a softball interview. No, it was that's when you knew he's not gonna be able to campaign. And it's been 10 days. And so what did he do? He did a phone call to Joe Scarborough. He wrote a letter. Now, he didn't write it. His staff wrote a letter to Congress. He did a straightforward interview with ABC for 22 minutes that was taped. He did 2 other interviews with randos that nobody's ever heard of and fed them the questions.
Yep.
So he still hasn't done a press conference. He still hasn't been challenged. He hasn't done a tough interview. He's gonna try to hide the rest of the campaign.
He's gonna try to hide, okay? And look, their tactics unfortunately worked back in 2020. I don't think it's gonna work this time around.
There's no chance it's gonna work.
And by the way, loyalists to Biden are still attempting to engage in the same smear tactics. So I want to go to the final video here. This is Ana Navarro on The View today. Watch.
For the last 8 days, it feels to me, I have seen nothing but breathless reporting. It almost feels like media malpractice of them trying to score the winning goal against Biden. Who can have the gotcha moment? They've been splicing, dicing, cubing everything he says, putting on a microscopic slide, and then looking at it under all sorts of magnifying glasses. Look. Joe Biden is the nominee. He is the human being standing between us and Donald Trump. I think Democrats need to stop making the case against Joe Biden and start making the case against Donald Trump.
Are they having a difficult time understanding that if you want to make the case that Trump shouldn't be the president, then you'd want the strongest possible Democrat to run against Donald Trump? Someone who is displaying just these jarring signs of cognitive decline, mental decline, is not the best candidate to run against Donald Trump. And the reason why they're panicking and the reason why they want to silence the critics and those who are concerned is because this cover-up has been going on so long that it wasn't until the debate that people finally woke up to the reality, okay? It way late in the game, I get it, but it's not too late to replace him. The thing is, he's delusional, and so are the people who are backing him right now.
But the reason that Ana Navarro, Whoopi Goldberg, Mika Brzezinski, Joe Scarborough, and the rest don't want to tell you about how you've been tricked is because they're the people who tricked you.
Exactly.
They were the ones driving the getaway car. So they're all friends with him. You know, Whoopi Goldberg on that same show today said, I don't care if Joe Biden poops his pants and can't function at all.
Then let's not have a president at all. But if the role of the president of the United States is really that useless, then we shouldn't even have an executive branch. We shouldn't have an executive. We should not have a president of the United States if it's that useless, if it's that worthless.
And you're getting to one of the points I wanted to make. Okay, so number one, you're not gonna win an election if you say our guy's gonna poop his pants every day, but don't worry, vote for him anyway.
Insane.
If you can't see that that's not gonna win the election, you're purposely blind or a blithering idiot. And I don't think they're idiots, they're purposely blind because they're part of this scheme, right? So, but the second point is, there are 2 main planks in this election are Donald Trump's a liar, but now we see Joe Biden lying about his mental health, obviously, when 8 out of 10 Americans think he's not mentally healthy enough. And then when they double down on that lie, what they're saying to 8 out of 10 Americans, the people who are going to decide this election, is, oh yeah, we think you're idiots. We think you're seeing it wrong. No, he's perfectly healthy and young. It's your fault for seeing it that way.
You're helping Trump. You're helping Trump.
Do you think that's a winning strategy? Okay, but last one is to the point that Anna was making. It's a really good point. Because think about it. Their second big talking for the point for the election is democracy's on the line. But now they're saying, who cares if the president functions or not? We're gonna have the same government either way. So wait, do we have a democracy or don't we have a democracy? And I thought you cared about democracy. And now you're saying, I don't mind if the president's a vegetable because we don't really have a democracy anyway. It is devastating. It is hypocrisy like I've never seen before. And I've seen them be massively hypocritical before. So this is the core of the most establishment media in the country going, we don't care. We're still gonna lie to you and we're still gonna pretend that Biden's fine. And we think you're a bunch of suckers and that you'll believe it. And at the end, you'll vote for our guy, even if you guys don't think that he's mentally healthy enough.
Wrong again, Bob.
Yeah, you're wrong. And all of you, all of those people who are defending Biden now in media, you're all guilty. When Donald Trump wins in a landslide that's gonna give him a mandate to totally destroy this government, we're gonna play those tapes over and over and over again. I'm going to humiliate every single person in mainstream media that said Biden should be the candidate until they're driven from the airwaves and live the rest of their lives in deep shame for what they've done.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with
Okay, so as you probably sensed, I am really not gonna let the attempt to rehabilitate Joe Biden's image in the wake of his resignation go. In fact, I plan to do the first shit post we've done in what, 8 months probably? I am planning on doing a shit post. Hopefully I'll have it ready for Thursday about Mr. Biden. But in the meantime, did you load in the slide of because I want to credit the guy who made it.
Yes.
Or showed it.
We got that.
Yeah, there it is. I got it. All right, so this was from Question Everything. So big shout out. I'm not sure if he made it, but I think he did. And it's very good. So this is just a brief 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes of some of the lowlights of Joe Biden's career.
Barack Obama nor I support redefining from a civil side what constitutes marriage.
Contributors, and the only reason, see, I went to the big guys for the money. I was ready to prostitute myself.
And turns out one of my closest friends ends up being Strom Thurmond. So that's a very nice.
All right, so Strom Thurmond was in the Klan. He ran for president as a segregationist candidate. I think it was 1948. He ran as a segregationist.
Introduction. It could have been shortened a great deal by saying Joe Biden is here tonight. He works for Strom Thurmond. In a nutshell, the president's plan doesn't include enough police officers to catch the violent thugs, not enough prosecutors to convict them, not enough judges to sentence them.
We passed a law through the leadership of Senator Thurmond and myself and others, a law that says if you're caught with that, you go to jail for 5 years. You get no probation. You get nothing other than 5 years in jail. Judge doesn't have a choice.
Why have I been so reluctant, so persistent in not providing aid to the people of Serbia, who are many good people? Why? Because until they look in their hearts, they can never cure themselves of the disease that they are the oppressed.
God-awful thing to say. If Haiti just quietly sunk into the Caribbean or rose up 300 feet, it wouldn't matter a whole lot.
President Joe Biden, how are you? Nice to see you. And I was suggesting we bomb Belgrade. I was suggesting that we send American pilots in and blow up all the bridges on the Drina. I think the one place where the greatest consternation would be caused in the short term for admission would be to admit the Baltic states now in terms of NATO-Russian, U.S.-Russian relations. And if there was ever anything that was going to tip the balance, were it to be tipped in terms of a vigorous and hostile reaction, I don't mean military, in Russia, it would be that.
You think? You think adding Baltic states would generate a hostile reaction from Russia? Wow. Young Joe Biden should give elderly, dementia-ridden Joe Biden a call about that. Let him in on it. Remember, now for anyone who wants to say, oh, this is in the past, Joe Biden in 2019 opened his campaign by bragging about how close his relationship was with segregationists, and how they got things done, and how they didn't call him boy. They called him son. That's who Joe Biden is. He has always been that person. Reagan thought his draft of a crime bill was too extreme. And when he's talking about if you get caught with that, 5 years, this is where the famous disparity between crack cocaine and powdered cocaine comes from. If you're using the street drug, 5 years. You didn't have that provision for people using the powdered form, which is a more upper class form. That is just a very small sampling. Obviously, this was all last minute. With my shit post, I will get into it more. But Joe Biden, he capped off a career of horrors with a genocide. That is how he should be remembered.
Yes. And he was always just a nasty, ignorant moron who thought that during the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the way to garner as much power and influence was to basically co-opt the worst ideas of an ascendant Republican Party and put a D next to it, right? And he was not the only one to do that, but as Russell said, he's the last active and present political figure serving now who really rode that wave. And that was his.
Notice when they talk about Joe Biden's long, illustrious political career, they never gonna run these clips because they don't want to expose who Joe Biden has always been. Strategy
throughout his whole life, and that is why in his later years he became, when he quote unquote softened on some of these things, and I say quote unquote softened because his temperament softened because he became an old man. Right.
I don't even see it that way. The times
really. Yeah. But this is what I mean. The way he presented softened. He is now just a company man. He's the guy who cut his he cut his teeth in that era, and he knows that those are the only kind of politics in his mind that work. Bill Clinton, same thing. Hillary Clinton, same thing. All these Democrats from that era, same thing. That is the only way to wield power. The only way to wield power is on behalf of the rich and the large corporations and the MIC against the ordinary people, not only of this country, but of the world. And that's just who he is. And obviously, there's just no place for that. I think this was from Corn Pop because it says on the bottom from Corn Pop. I think this guy just embedded it into his tweet. So whoever did that, good job. Good on you for doing that. Seems like Corn Pop was the original uploader, if not the editor. But that was a nice little retrospective and a nice good riddance to Joe Biden.
Cool figure. Follow me.